Chapter 1204. In the stone house, Lin Sun looked at the jade box in his hand with a strange look in his eyes. There was a fist-sized divine fruit in the jade box. It was flowing with illusory starlight, and its fragrance assailed Lin Sun's nose. If one looked carefully, the translucent and crystalline skin of the divine fruit had numerous mysterious markings of the Tao moving about, and they were like twisting earthworms that were profound and miraculous. It seemed to be breathing, and its luster was bright and dim, full of divinity. Star fruit. This was a real divine medicine. Lin Sun couldn't help but think of the scene a few days ago when the fruit was ripe. On the starnet divine tree that was completely bare like the roots of a horned dragon, numerous petals glowed brightly, and a divine sound that was like tidewater resounded. Then, the whole divine wood burned fiercely and turned into ashes. Only a fist-sized star fruit appeared in the void, collecting all the divine fire in the sky. It originally wanted to escape, but it had already been captured and sealed by Lin Sun, who had been waiting for it. In the past, Lin Sun had never thought that a divine medicine could have such a magical spirituality like a living thing. Lin Sun took a deep breath and put away the jade box again. No King Realm strongman would use divine medicine to cultivate, including Lin Sun. He wouldn't do such a reckless thing. It was only during the longevity tribulation that the divine medicine would be able to exert its greatest effect. What's the matter? Lin Sun pushed the door open and saw Li Shangshui waiting there. The forces that have pledged allegiance to Star Mountain are getting more and more restless. They often gather together in private. It's very likely that they're planning something. Li Shangshui hesitated for a moment and said to Lin Sun via voice transmission. Lin Sun smiled and said, I know. In addition to the descendants of the Beast Spirit Mountain and the Enfire sect, there were 5 other major forces in Star Mountain today. The reason why these forces had pledged allegiance to Lin Sun was that they regarded him as a backer rather than a true surrender and service. It could be said that if Lin Sun wanted them to risk their lives to deal with other forces at this time, no one would listen to his orders. If that was all, it would be fine. They were just using each other, so there was no influence. But if someone had ulterior motives and wanted to plot against him, Lin Sun couldn't tolerate it. Brother Lin, what do you plan to do? Li Shangshui couldn't help but ask. Lin Sun thought for a moment and suddenly said, If you were my enemy, would you come to kill me after knowing that I'm on Star Mountain? Li Shangshui was startled and said hesitantly, It should be. Lin Sun shook his head and said, It's not that I should, but that I will. If I don't die, my enemies will never be at ease. Similarly, if my enemies don't die, I won't be satisfied either. Li Shangshui was confused. He didn't know why Lin Sun suddenly mentioned this issue. As for revenge, you definitely can't wait passively. This means that the enemy will take the initiative and gain the upper hand. As soon as Lin Sun said this, Li Shangshui agreed with him. If they took the initiative, they might be able to win by surprise. And being passive meant that one was destined to be beaten. I've been in the distant Fireland for more than a month. I believe my enemies should have found out where I am during this period of time. Lin Sun's dark eyes were cold, and he said to himself, Do you think I should wait for them or take the initiative to go to their territory? Li Shangshui was silent. He had already heard that Lin Sun had planned to leave Star Mountain to settle accounts with his enemies. Do you need help? Li Shangshui took a breath and asked. A smile flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. He thought to himself that he didn't misjudge Li Shangshui. It took a lot of courage for Li Shangshui to choose to support him at this time. No, the cause and effect of this hatred is too great. It's enough for me to shoulder it alone. Lin Sun said casually. More than a dozen names of ancient orthodoxies quietly emerged in his mind. Every ancient orthodoxy was a giant existence in the outside world. They were guarded by Saint Realm strongmen. If others were involved, Lin Sun would feel guilty. Tonight, your Inhua sect should leave with the descendants of the Beast Mountain. After I leave, Star Mountain is bound to be unstable, so as not to be involved in the storm. Lin Sun said casually. Li Shangshui was shocked and then nodded. With Lin Sun in charge of Star Mountain, the other forces stationed on the mountain could only bear it and bow their heads even if they were dissatisfied. But once Lin Sun left, these forces were bound to fight for the control of Star Mountain. At that time, the first to be regarded as a thorn in their side would be the descendants of Inhua's sect and Beast Mountain. Thank you for taking care of me these days, Brother Lin. Li Shangshui cupped his hands and said solemnly. It's nothing. Lin Sun laughed it off. He could help people for a while, but he couldn't help people for a lifetime. In the final analysis, if he wanted to stand and rise in the upper 9 realms, he still had to rely on his own strength. In the evening, on the mountainside of Star Mountain was the place where the descendants of the 5 forces who had surrendered to Lin Sun lived. Brother Ing, every day, we 5 forces have to pay 10 kilograms of wishful divine gold and a king herb to Demon Lin. But Demon Lin only needs to sit back and enjoy the fruits of our labor. This is a little unfair. Brother Ing, in my opinion, if the 5 of us join forces, we can totally replace Fiend Celestial Lin and control Star Mesh Mountain. Brother Ing, didn't you see that Demon Lin only treats Inhua's sect and Beast Mountain as his own people? As for us, we're just fat sheep being exploited by him. Brother Ing, as long as you agree, we swear that we will definitely kill Fiend Celestial Lin with you and snatch this Star Mesh Mountain. A group of people gathered together. Although they looked different, their aura was extremely strong, and there was a majestic aura surrounding them. At this time, they all looked at a black-robed young man in the center. The black-robed young man had fair skin, wide eyebrows, red lips, and white teeth, so he looked like an elegant scholar as he sat there. But those who knew his identity knew that he was an ancient freak of Yinglong. His name was Ying Tianxing. He looked gentle, but his temperament was the coldest and cruelest. With Demon Lin in charge, it's enough to deter all enemies. He's a pillar that can shelter us from the wind and rain. Why should we cut him down? Ying Tianxing said slowly. Like the others, he used telepathy. This was Star Mountain, after all. They were not bold enough to plot to kill Lin Sun in a flagrant manner. Brother Ing, you're wrong. Although Demon God Lin is strong, if we were to kill him, it would similarly serve as a deterrent to the other forces. After all, if Demon God Lin died in our hands, would the other forces still dare to be enemies with us? The others spoke up one after another. Ying Tianxing could tell at a glance that these guys had already reached a tacit understanding and were just waiting for him to agree. He even knew that at this time, if he dared to stay out of it or oppose it, he would definitely be suspected and antagonized by these forces. Thinking of this, Ying Tianxing said in a low voice, if we want to get rid of Demon Lin, we must first get rid of Li Shangshui. This guy is Demon Lin's most solid supporter. In a word, he had undoubtedly expressed his attitude. A look of joy appeared on everyone's face. With Ying Tianxing joining them, they had 5 Extinction King realm experts on their side. This kind of power was enough to not fear Demon Lin. This is very simple. When Li Shangshui goes out again, we can choose an opportunity to kill him without anyone knowing. Someone said in a cold voice. All right, let's do that. After a long silence, a look of determination flashed in Ying Tianxing's eyes as he nodded in agreement. However, on that night, news spread that Li Shangshui had led all the successors of the Yin Fire sect and the 10,000 Beast Spirit Mountain away from Star Mesh Mountain. Furthermore, he did not intend to return. This stunned Ying Tianxing and the others somewhat caught off guard. Could it be that this guy had already sensed that something was wrong and had left Demon Lin behind to escape? But not long after, another piece of news spread. Demon Lin had also left, and he indicated that he might not return. This great piece of news even made Ying Tianxing a little dumbfounded. Was this for real? Before they could even make a move, a huge problem had been solved just like that? This was too unreal, wasn't it? Sigh, now that Demon Lin has left, I actually feel a little reluctant. After all, with him around, he has helped us fend off many dangers. Someone sighed, but there was a hint of mockery in his voice. I can only say that Demon Lin is lucky. Otherwise, what awaits him would probably be death. Someone sneered. They went to the mountain peak together and entered the stone house where Lin Sun had previously lived. After careful observation, they finally confirmed that Demon Lin would not return. This was because the stone house was empty. Except for the ancestral source stone that could not be moved, there was nothing left. Furthermore, all the spiritual herbs and spiritual materials in the herb garden near the mountain peak had been taken away. This demon Lin is really ruthless. He didn't forget to make a fortune before leaving. I remember that there were 7 or 8 king herbs in the herb garden, but they're all gone now. Someone felt the heartache and his face darkened. Don't worry about this. Now that this guy has left, Star Mesh Mountain will be ours in the future. This is a joyous occasion. We should celebrate. Some people were beaming with joy and were overjoyed. Yes, let's celebrate. That night, the heirs of the 5 great forces gathered together and drank wine to their heart's content while chatting and laughing. It was a joyous occasion. However, on this night, the relationship between the 5 major forces had become subtle. Fiend God Lin had indeed left, but which faction should control Star Mesh Mountain, especially the stone house where the ancestral source stone was? Who should own it? If these problems were not solved, no matter which force it was, they would not feel at ease. However, before they could solve these problems, an extremely panicked voice sounded on Star Mesh Mountain in the morning 3 days later. Oh no! Oh no! We've been surrounded. The voice was like a broken gong, cutting through the peaceful atmosphere of the morning. There are actually people who are not afraid of death coming to Star Mesh Mountain to make trouble. Let's go. I'd like to see which ignorant force is courting death. Immediately, the 5 forces were alarmed. Tianxing and the other supreme kings walked out one after another. Chapter 1205. The Star Mesh Mountain was surrounded by groups of cultivators from all directions. Each group of cultivators was led by a Death King. Their killing intent surged into the sky, causing the weather to change and the world to darken. Directly opposite the mountain gate were the powerhouses of the Golden Crow bloodline, led by the 9th Golden Crow Prince, Wu Lingfeng. In the other areas were the powerhouses of the Xuandu Dao sect, the Sea Soul race, the Moon-worshipping sect, the Ancient Mystic Light race, and so on. More than 10 major forces, led by Death Kings, surrounded the lone Star Mesh Mountain so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. This kind of force was enough to make anyone despair. How could this be? On Star Mesh Mountain, the pupils of Tianxing and the others constricted as if they had been struck by lightning. Their hands and feet were cold. 3 days ago, Lin Sun, Li Shangshui, and the others had just left, which meant that Tianxing and the others had effortlessly taken control of Star Mesh Mountain. This was supposed to be a joyous event that made them feel happy. In these 3 days, they had even begun to consider themselves the masters of Star Mesh Mountain. Who would have thought that in just 3 days, Star Mesh Mountain would be surrounded? Moreover, more than 10 major forces had moved together, and there were more than 10 Death Kings. This was like an unexpected disaster that almost caused Tianxing and the others to break down. Demon God Lin, are you still not planning to show yourself? Wu Lingfeng spoke in high spirits. His body was golden and slender, and he stood there casually, exuding a proud and arrogant demeanor. His voice was like thunder, reverberating in the surroundings. So he had come for Demon God Lin. Tianxing and the others secretly heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Friends of the Golden Crow bloodline, Demon God Lin has already left 3 days ago. This place has changed owners. Bullsh asterisk T. When we came, we already asked around. You guys have already become that Demon God Lin's lackeys. How dare you lie to us now? Do you really think we are idiots?" On the side of the Sea Soul clan, a rugged man shouted angrily. Tianxing and the others turned pale from the scolding, but in the end, they could only endure it and explain. "Friend, this is a misunderstanding. We have never sided with Demon God Lin. Shut up." On the Xuandu Dao sect side, a woman with a spirit sword on her back had a gloomy expression as she said, "If not for you pledging allegiance to Fiend God Lin, how could you have received his protection?" The expressions of Wu Lingfeng and the others became cold and gloomy. They were furious in their hearts. What did these people think they were? Was he a 3-year-old child that could be easily fooled? Tianxing and the rest almost cried. Why didn't these guys listen to their explanations? They really didn't rely on Demon God Lin. Fellow Taoists, we have no intentions of deceiving you. To be honest, if not for that fiend Celestial Lin's quick escape, we would have long taken action to eradicate him. Tianqing took a deep breath and spoke in a deep voice, his words sonorous. However, the more he explained, the darker Wu Lingfeng and the others' faces became. They felt that the other party was insulting their intelligence. To be able to come up with such a lame lie, it was simply intolerable. Cut the *king crap. Let me tell you, we didn't come here with the intention of letting any of you off. The rough-looking man from the Sea Soul clan roared with killing intent. Since Demon God Lin isn't willing to show himself, then we will flatten this mountain and destroy this place. Tianqing and the others were completely dumbfounded. They were so aggrieved that they were about to cough up blood. They wanted to cry, but had no tears. What the *CK was going on? Even if it wasn't a problem, it would still become a problem. Forget it. There's no point in saying more. These people are stubborn, so there's no need for us to be polite. We should end the battle quickly and flatten this place. Wu Lingfeng's eyes were like golden lightning, extremely terrifying. With a wave of his hand, the siege began. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. From all directions, Peerless King Realm experts moved out, releasing a monstrous might. They were like gods, causing the void of this world to collapse. Kill, flatten this mountain. Kill these lackeys of Demon God Lin. They dare to deceive us like we were idiots. We must kill them all. Amidst the rising and falling shouts, the group of King Realm experts attacked. In an instant, attacks that blotted out the sky and covered the earth swept towards the Star Mesh Mountain in the middle like a brilliant ocean. This scene was undoubtedly too shocking. Tianqing and the others turned pale in an instant, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. How could they fight? Inexplicably, at this moment, they all thought of Lin's son. If Demon God Lin was still here, he would definitely come out to save the situation, right? Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets now. They could only fight. Everyone, we can only fight to the death. Perhaps we can kill our way out of this encirclement. Tianqing was also enraged and roared. Kill. Kill as many as you can. The eyes of the others were also red. They all knew that the situation was extremely dangerous. No one dared to be negligent. They all exerted all their skills and began to fight with their lives on the line. A great battle was completely ignited. Strictly speaking, this should be a bloody battle caused by a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, even if they explained it at this time, it was destined that no one would believe them. After a full cup of tea's time, Star Mesh Mountain was covered in blood, and more than half of the mountain had collapsed. Rocks tumbled down, ancient trees were broken, and the spiritual medicines and spiritual materials growing on the mountain were severely damaged. Originally, this was like a paradise for cultivation, but in the blink of an eye, it had become a scene of desolation, and the air was filled with blood. In this battle, Tianqing and the others were killed. Not a single one survived. The other descendants of the forces they belonged to were also wiped out. Wu Lingfeng and the others had come with great momentum. They had gathered more than 10 major forces to completely eliminate Lin Sun and his Star Mesh Mountain forces. Therefore, they naturally would not allow anyone to escape. Although they had killed Tianqing and the others, Wu Lingfeng and the others had suffered nearly 30% casualties. There were also 2 peerless kings who had lost their lives in the battle, and the other peerless kings were more or less injured. After all, Tianqing and the others were also peerless kings. When they fought with their lives on the line, the lethality caused was not to be underestimated. However, in comparison, the result of this battle was already very good. The outcome was already decided. However, Wu Lingfeng and the others were not happy at all. That Lin's son is really not here. After searching the entire Star Mesh Mountain and confirming that there was no trace of Lin's son, Wu Lingfeng and the others' faces darkened. They were so depressed that they almost coughed up blood. Their most important goal in coming here was to kill Lin's son. Who would have thought that after paying such a huge price, they would only be able to kill a bunch of lackeys? The main culprit had long since escaped. Could it be Could it be that they didn't lie to us just now? Someone murmured, his face extremely pale. There was a moment of silence. Wu Lingfeng and the others also realized that they might have made a big mistake in this battle, causing them to lose some face. This damned demon god Lin is too cunning. Someone gritted his teeth in hatred, fuming with anger. What should we do now? Someone could not help but ask. The others also looked at Wu Lingfeng. They had come with such a large force, but they had made such a mistake. They had paid a bloody price, and even lost the lives of two peerless kings. In the end, they had not even found the shadow of the main culprit. This was too embarrassing. Wait a little longer. This demon god Lin might have just gone out. When he hears that Star Mesh Mountain is in trouble, he will definitely return. Wu Lingfeng took a deep breath, restrained the impulse of coughing up blood, and said in a low voice, in addition, send people to the nearby area to investigate the news. This time, we must not return without any achievement. Everyone nodded. This was the only way. If they returned without any achievement and were known by others, they would definitely become a laughing stock. But where on earth did Demon God Lin go? They were eager to know. At this time, Lin Sun was standing in front of a towering mountain shaped like a tiger. Above this mountain, there was auspicious light rising and divine light falling. From a distance, it looked like a waterfall of stars flying up. The mountain was like a tiger, constantly swallowing the rolling spiritual energy between heaven and earth. A layer of obscure prohibition power covered it, blocking the investigation of the outside world, making it impossible to see the specific scene in the mountain. But even then, such an extraordinary scene could already be said to be shocking. Good place. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with a touch of light. 3 days ago, after leaving Star Mesh Mountain, he said goodbye to the descendants of Enfire Sect and Beast Mountain and set off alone. Then he wandered in the distant fire territory, trekking over mountains and rivers, and after many inquiries, he finally determined the place where the enemy forces were entrenched. The spiritual mountain in front of him was called Flying Star, the territory of Golden Crow. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to withdraw his gaze. The prohibition power of Flying Star Mountain had been cracked by him and could no longer stop him. Stop! This is the territory of Golden Crow. What are you doing here? In front of Mountain Gate, there were several strong guards. When they saw Lin Sun coming alone, they immediately questioned him. You don't know me? Lin Sun asked. Everyone was stunned, and then their eyes suddenly widened as if they had seen a ghost. It seemed that they couldn't believe that the guy who was hated by their Golden Crow bloodline would suddenly appear here. Aren't you in Star Mesh Mountain? One person asked in a silly way. The others were also confused. After all, this time their ninth prince, Wu Lingfeng, had gathered more than a dozen major forces to go to Star Mesh Mountain in order to kill Demon God Lin in one fell swoop. But now, Fiend Celestial Lin had appeared in their territory. What do you want to do? Someone gasped and asked in a trembling voice. Revenge, of course. Lin Sun smiled slightly. Puff! As soon as his voice fell, he waved his sleeve, and these strong men in front of the mountain gate had no time to escape. They were obliterated on the spot by a blazing light. Then, with his hands behind his back, he stepped into the mountain gate steadily and calmly. Buzz! The royal prohibition formation covering the mountain suddenly rippled. However, Lin Sun walked leisurely and was never stopped by the terrible prohibition power from beginning to end. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you break into Flying Star Mountain? On the way, someone was alarmed and shouted. Chapter 1206. At the peak of Flying Star Mountain, the palaces were arranged row upon row, and all of them were newly constructed. Every single palace was occupied by a great power, and they were clearly differentiated from one another. Flying Star Mountain was one of the few blessed lands in the distant Fire Realm. Since the opening of the Upper Nine Realms, this place had always been occupied by the Golden Crow clan. Up until now, not only was no one able to shake it, many powers had chosen to submit to the Golden Crow clan and become its vassals. In this way, the combined forces of the entire Flying Star Mountain had stepped into the ranks of overlords in the distant Fire Realm, and there were no more than 5 that could go against them. Unfortunately, when the ninth prince left, he was worried that other powers would take advantage of the situation and invade, so he left us on the mountain to defend. Otherwise, we could have gone to meet that demon god Lin. A man in a fiery robe sighed. It can't be helped. There are many powers in the distant fire realm. If we all leave Flying Star Mountain, the other powers will definitely be unable to sit still. At the side, a white-haired woman spoke slowly. Everyone, since we're staying on the mountain, we'll obey the ninth prince's orders and protect the divine herbs on the mountain. A man with a curly beard spoke in a low voice. When the divine herbs were mentioned, everyone looked towards the same direction at the same time. It was a waterfall that cascaded down from the cliff. What flowed out of the waterfall was shockingly the purest spiritual liquid. There was a pool beneath the waterfall, and there were 3 divine lotuses growing within it. Every single divine lotus had branches that were as black as ink, and their flowers that were as white as jade. One black and one white. It was like the intersection of yin and yang, perfectly fusing into one, and it flowed with a pure and beautiful rain of light. The waterfall that was completely formed from spiritual liquid descended like a white dragon, and before it even fell into the pool, it was swallowed by the 3 divine lotuses. Yin-yang divine lotus. It was a peerless divine herb that was extinct in the outside world. It was even to the extent that amongst all the divine herbs in the world, the yin-yang divine lotus could be considered a high-grade one, and it was extremely rare. If one consumed it, not only would it be immeasurably beneficial to the cultivation of a king realm expert, it would also allow one to directly control the 2 grand daos of yin and yang without comprehending them. The grand daos of yin and yang were viewed as the daos of yin-yang. They displayed the purity of the world, the order of the world, and they were extremely profound and powerful. Yin didn't grow, and yang didn't grow. If he could control these 2 daos, he would be able to merge them into a true heaven-connecting Tao, Tai Chi. As for the grand Tao of Taiji, it was a Tao that pointed directly to the essence of the world. It possessed endless and boundless profundities. Thus, it was obvious how great the value of the 3 yin-yang divine lotuses within the pool beneath the waterfall was. Before the 9th Golden Crow Prince, Wu Lingfeng, left behind an elite force to guard the Flying Star Mountain. At the end of the day, it was to ensure the safety of the 3 divine herbs. The young man in a fiery robe, the white-haired woman, the curly-bearded man, and a few others were all existences that had stepped into the Extinction King realm, and they were from different powers. With such a force holding down the fort, no matter which great power came to attack Meteor Mountain, they would probably suffer heavy losses. The 9th Crown Prince once said that when he returns, he will pluck these 3 divine lotuses and bring out 2 of them as a reward for us to fight for. The fiery-robed man's eyes were burning. He took a deep breath and said, "Let's not talk about how we're going to fight for it. We can't let the 9th Prince down." The white-haired woman laughed with ridicule and scoffed with disdain. "With us holding down the fort here, which power would dare to attack us? The only power we have to fear is the number 1 sect in the West Heaven dimension, the profound Sikh sword school, the Heavenless sect, the ultimate Tao sect, and a few other great powers. The profound Sikh sword school and Heavenless sect each occupy a large paradise, so it's absolutely impossible for them to go against us unless they're confident in their victory. So, we don't have to worry about this." The curly-bearded man spoke casually. Presently, only the Golden Crow clan, the profound Sikh sword school, the Heavenless sect, the ultimate Tao sect, and a few other great powers could be considered as overlords in the distant fire domain. Just as the curly-bearded man had said, if they weren't confident in their victory, then it was absolutely impossible for conflict to arise between overlords. This was like a sandpiper and a clam fighting, and it was very likely for both sides to be heavily injured while the other great powers would take advantage of the situation to reap the benefits. "Shit, someone's attacking." A sharp howl resounded as a black-clothed man ran over in panic. The fiery-robed man and the others were stunned. There's really someone who isn't afraid of death and dares to attack us at this moment? Which great power is it? The white-haired woman stood up while emanating a murderous aura, and her icy cold voice resounded throughout the peak of Meteor Mountain. It's not those great powers, it's a person. The black-clothed man spoke with a trembling voice. Everyone was stunned once more, and they almost thought they heard wrongly. Is he mad to dare come to Meteor Mountain all by himself? Or perhaps he's purely tired of living and has come to court death. Come, let's go have a look. The fiery-robed man was the first to make a move. Interesting. I would like to see exactly who it is that dares to challenge him alone. The others stood up successively with cold and indifferent expressions, and killing intent was faintly visible in their eyes. Bang! Lin Sun ascended the mountain at a leisurely pace. Many experts noticed him along the way, and they tried to stop him, but it was all in vain. He didn't waste any strength at all. His movements were swift and fierce, and he struck out like a bolt of lightning as he slaughtered his way forward, leaving behind corpses and pools of blood all along the way. On the other hand, his entire body was clear and spotless as he continued forward. Shrill cries, sharp cries, and shouts resounded without end, causing the originally tranquil Meteor Mountain to become chaotic. Rumble! The dragon-ice dragon soared into the sky like a snow-white dragon. Every single time it moved, it would crush its opponents that charged out from its path, causing the latter's body to explode into pieces while a rain of blood sprayed down. You're courting death. Quickly control the formation to annihilate him. A group of King Realm experts appeared with livid expressions, and they were extremely furious. They couldn't tolerate Lin Sun running amok. The royal Tao restriction formation that covered the mountain glowed, and it flowed with obscure and terrifying fluctuations of destruction. Moreover, the scene of a golden crow soaring through the sky and incinerating the heavens and the earth faintly appeared. This was undoubtedly an extremely terrifying royal Tao restriction formation. As soon as it was activated, boundless lightning and flames charged out and transformed into golden crows that flapped their wings and emanated divine flames that rained down towards Lin Sun. If it was Extinction King Realm expert, then it would be extremely difficult for that expert to endure if he was trapped within it, and he was bound to suffer calamity. But all of this was bound to be in vain for Lin Sun. As a spirit tattoo grandmaster, he'd seen through the profundities of this formation before he'd ascended the mountain. So how could he possibly be trapped within it? Bang! In an instant, he waved his sleeve, and the Tao seal appeared in the air and smashed towards the core of the formation. At the same time, his figure flickered, and he used the 9 strikes for shaking heaven. His fist force burst out, and all the divine flames that pounced on him were smashed into pieces. The golden crows derived from the formation didn't have time to react before Lin Sun rushed forward. He killed them on the spot with one punch, and the rain of light exploded. Bang! As the Tao seal fell, the foundation of the formation was severely shaken, causing the whole formation to wail and shake violently. The group of King Realm experts who operated this formation were all shocked. What a powerful combat force! How could he break the formation after being trapped in it? It's him, Demon Lin. Finally, someone recognized Lin Sun and cried out involuntarily. How could it be possible? Didn't the 9th prince go to kill him? Why did he appear here? The others' faces changed in disbelief. Bang! With a loud bang, Lin Sun rushed out of a flaw in the formation like a demon. His whole body was flowing with Taoist light, and his power was terrifying. Oh no! The King Realm experts were all shocked. This forbidden formation was derived from the secret formation of the Golden Crows, and it was extremely powerful. But who would have thought that it would be broken by Demon Lin in just a few breaths? Lin Sun had already rushed over and attacked quickly. The mighty fist force was like a surging ocean, revealing the real power of the law. The King Realm experts tried to dodge, but it was impossible. Soon, there were more broken corpses on the ground, their bodies and souls destroyed. Although they were King Realm experts, they were really no different from chickens and dogs to Lin Sun. He didn't need to spend too much effort to kill them. The whole Flying Star Mountain was shaken, and a tragic atmosphere filled the air. Lin Sun didn't feel the slightest burden about this. When he climbed the mountain, He knew that Wu Lingfeng led a group of King Realm experts to attack Star Luo Mountain today in order to kill him. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little lucky. He was not afraid, but glad that he had arranged for the successors of Yin Fire Sect and Beast Spirit Mountain to leave Star Luo Mountain a few days in advance. Otherwise, he was bound to encounter a great disaster this time. Lin Sun didn't need to think at all to know that even if he returned to Star Luo Mountain now, it would probably be beyond recognition. Of course, the most tragic was undoubtedly the 5 forces who stayed on Star Luo Mountain. Since they couldn't find him, Wu Lingfeng would definitely vent his anger on them. Lin Sun didn't feel guilty at all. These 5 forces had ulterior motives. Even if they didn't suffer a disaster, they would be wiped out by him in the future. Since you have come to my territory, I will destroy your dwellings one by one. This was what Lin Sun was thinking at the moment. Kill! Someone shouted, and a scarlet flying shuttle swept over. It was dazzling and showed its power far beyond that of an ordinary King Realm expert. Obviously, a top figure had made a move. Lin Sun didn't dodge. His fist force swept out, and with a loud bang, the flying shuttle collapsed and made a shrill wail. At the same time, the young man in the red robe, the white-haired woman, and the other King Realm experts appeared. Demon Lin, it's really you? They were shocked and in disbelief. They couldn't imagine that the target Wu Lingfeng wanted to kill with all his might was not on Star Luo Mountain, but had taken the initiative to come to their territory. This was too surprising. Why can't it be me? Lin Sun asked. As he spoke, he strode forward. His lonely figure flowed with thousands of rays of light, like a dormant dragon coming out of the abyss. He looked down on the top figures as if they were nothing. Since you are here, don't even think about leaving alive. The white-haired woman took a deep breath and said coldly. She threw her hand, and a silver-white sword swept out. With a buzz, it shook the void and slashed at Lin Sun. The others also realized that the situation was a little strange, but they didn't have time to think too much and attacked one after another. Their top priority now was to kill this Demon Lin who had suddenly appeared. Otherwise, Star Luo Mountain would be in danger. P.S. This Saturday night at 7 o'clock, Goldfish will appear in the Battle of Talent Circle. She will chat with everyone and give a batch of gifts, including Kindle e-readers, Panda Cups, USB flash drives, and so on. The event posts have been pinned to the top of the circle. Chapter 1207. The 7 Extinction King Realm experts came from different forces and pledged allegiance to the Golden Crow clan. Now, after confirming Lin's identity, the white-haired woman took the initiative to attack Lin, who was rushing towards her. The others followed suit. They had heard many things about Lin Sun long ago. They knew that during the period when he entered the distant Fire Realm, he had killed several peerless kings. His combat strength was extremely strong. Therefore, they didn't hold back at all. Boom! Suddenly, the divine light surged like a tide, and the power of kingship roared. This scene frightened some strong people in the distance. They stayed far away and didn't dare to get close. Extinction King Realm. Every single one of them possessed formidable combat strengths that were sufficient to crush an ordinary King Realm expert, and they'd never appeared in the past. As for this legendary realm, there were too many analyses and speculations. But so far, no one could really determine how powerful the Extinction King realm could be. That was because this realm had never existed since the beginning of time. It had never truly appeared after the arrival of this great era. Even sages couldn't understand it. But there was no doubt that those who could pass the Extinction King tribulation and become Extinction Kings were the top talents among their peers. At this moment, 7 Extinction Kings attacked together. The power of the Extinction King realm gathered together and erupted. It could be imagined how terrifying it was. And under such an attack, would Fiend Celestial Lin be able to withstand it? Everyone in the distance was watching closely. Whoosh! In a split second, the sword had broken through the air and chopped towards Lin Sun's head. Lin Sun's eyes were like lightning. He kept charging forward and didn't dodge at all. Only a strange tribulation appeared in front of him. The tribulation shook and turned into a swanee. Different from before, The Swanee was like a real living creature, exuding a terrible kingship aura. Its giant claws, covered with dragon scales, held an ancient seal. It smashed down. In a trance, everyone had a feeling that an ancient Swanee broke through time and space. It grasped the seal and wanted to suppress all evil in the world. With a clang, the divine sword was hit by the seal and fell to the ground like a dead snake. The white-haired woman felt suffocated. She suffered a backlash and almost coughed up blood. Her expression changed abruptly as she let out a sharp howl. She had completely realized that demonic God Lin was indeed, as the rumors said. He was extremely powerful and had to be treated as a great enemy. Rumble. At the same time, Lin Sun had already charged into the attacks of the group of kings. He was arrogant, domineering, and extremely powerful. It didn't look like they were being besieged. It was more like one person was attacking a group of kings. The light around him rumbled and spread out like a tsunami, forming the word tribulation that rushed in all directions. Some of the tribulations turned into ice dragons with pearls in their mouths. Icy flames swirled around them as they poured down, freezing the void and filling it with extreme cold power. Some turned into burdens, carrying natural battle armor on their backs as they charged forward. Some transformed into Pu-Lao that carried a zither, and the sound of the zither reverberated like the sound of a powerful army. On the other hand, Yazzie let out a long howl, and the sound waves fused with the sound of the zither, transforming into a terrifying torrent of divine power that surged in all directions. Apart from this, he would taunt with his bow in hand, and his arrow would shoot through the universe. Bain held the precious cauldron. Billowing smoke and dust rushed out of the cauldron, seemingly capable of drowning out the sun, moon, and stars. Chunyo stepped into the starry sky with a divine saber hanging from his tail. Ba charged into the sky, casting out a large net that blotted out the heavens and earth. Yazzie roared, becoming several thousand zhang tall, and his roar was like thunder. After Lin Sun grasped the power of the King Dao laws, the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon underwent a brand new transformation. Every divine beast seemed to have come alive, and they wielded their own divine weapons. Rumble. This place suddenly became turbulent, and if it wasn't for the power of restrictions covering it, the entire Flying Star Mountain would have suffered a destructive blow. In such an intense battle, with a bang, the fiery-robed youth who bore the brunt of the attack was the first to be defeated. Damn it, the power of the King Dao laws. The fiery-robed man roared angrily, his face full of shock and disbelief. Dark red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Obviously, he was injured in this first confrontation. On the other side, a tall and thin man in a gray robe let out a miserable cry. After his arm was frozen by the pearl in the mouth of the ice dragon, he was slashed by the divine blade hanging from Chionyo's tail. Pooh! An arm was directly chopped off, and even the blood was frozen, not spilling out. Impossible! How can he be so powerful? We're both at the apex, so why is his strength formidable to such an extent? Even though the other King Realm experts had dealt with the various attacks, they couldn't help but be shocked when they witnessed the miserable states the young man and gray-robed man were in. The first confrontation allowed them to personally sense Lin Sun's strength for the first time. Fighting Lin Sun was like going against a divine mountain, and it actually gave them a feeling of powerlessness that was impossible to shake. This caused them to feel disbelief. After all of them stood at the apex, and there was no lack of existences that had grasped the energy of Dao laws. Now, not only were the 7 of them unable to do anything to Lin Sun, 2 of them had even been injured by Lin Sun, and this was too shocking. Everyone, this bastard was already invincible when he was at the reincarnation evolution realm. Now that he stepped foot into the ultimate king realm, do all of you dare imagine the consequences if we still don't go all out? The white-haired woman's expression was unsightly as she gritted her teeth. There was utterly no need for her to remind them because the others had already realized that the situation was bad, and they'd completely taken Lin Sun to be their #1 enemy. Bang! The battle grew even more terrifying. It caused the heavens and the earth to dim down, while terrifying, chaotic flows of energy surged towards the surroundings. Every single strike carried the might of destruction capable of incinerating mountains and boiling oceans. They truly didn't dare imagine what this place would look like if the energy of the restrictions didn't cover it. The experts that resided in the other areas of Flying Star Mountain couldn't help but shudder when they saw this, and they felt extreme terror. Some experts that had already stepped foot into the King Realm, yet had no fate with the apex, couldn't help but be astounded and at a loss for what to do at this moment. They were all in the King Realm, but because of the word apex, the gap between them was like the gap between the heavens and the earth. Kill. The white-haired woman and the others had already gone all out. In the outside world, the impact of such a force was sufficient to destroy a city or obliterate an expanse of mountains and rivers. However, they were still unable to do anything to Lin Sun. At this moment, the glow of the Tao flowed around his body. Even though he was all alone, his imposing aura was like a dragon that had emerged from a deep pool, and he moved through the surroundings while deducing his own Tao. Every single punch carried the will to obliterate the world. On the other hand, the divine beasts formed from the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon resided around him, and they moved about while executing various divine abilities to destroy all attacks. Looking from a distance, he was like a god descending to the world, with unparalleled and invincible momentum. This was Lin Sun's Tao, with his own body. Without relying on external objects or opportunities, he proved the peerless king's tribulation and embarked on an unprecedented extreme road. Now, during the period of secluded cultivation in Star Mountain, Lin Sun not only consolidated his cultivation, but also reached the realm of Tao laws of water and fire. When he killed Wen Aohai, Lin Sun didn't even master the power of Tao laws, but he defeated Wen Aohai easily. At this time, he had mastered the power of Tao laws, and his combat strength had already undergone a qualitative transformation. It was no longer the same as when he killed Wen Aohai. Now, although there were as many as 7 Peerless King Realm experts for Lin Sun, although there was some pressure, that was all. He didn't even use the broken sword. Boom! After a while, Lin Sun rushed violently, and his fist force burst out in all directions, vast and boundless. Several people coughed up blood, and their bodies were swept by the fist force, and they staggered back. Crack! After being hit many times, the sword of the white-haired woman finally couldn't bear the burden and broke, bursting into a rain of light. There was a scream of horror and panic in the distance. They couldn't believe that demon god Lin, who was besieged by a group of Peerless King Realm experts, could be so terrifying. With a bang, Lin Sun swooped down, and the Tao light rolled, directly imprisoned the curly-bearded man, and then stomped him to the ground. The curly-bearded man screamed, but before he could react, Lin Sun's toes exerted force, and his body directly cracked, and he was stomped into meat paste. He died extremely miserably. A Peerless King Realm expert died suddenly. Everyone's hair stood on end, and their scalps were numb with fear. The power of crushing a Peerless King Realm expert with 1 foot was simply unimaginable. Kill! The fiery-robed man and the others were completely stimulated. Their eyes were red, and they all began to fight desperately. How dare you call yourself the Peerless King Realm expert with such power? Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with disdain, and he didn't hold back anymore. He had already tested the strength of these opponents. To be honest, it surprised him, and he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. If such people dare to call themselves the Peerless King Realm expert, it would be a slander to the word Peerless King Realm. Ah! A man screamed in horror. Lin Sun unexpectedly grabbed his neck, lifted him up, and then split him into 2 halves. Blood splashed high into the air. Then, the man's body turned into its original form, which was a fat 5-colored partridge. Lin Sun thought of a popular saying on the dining table in the secular world. No bird is better than a partridge, and 1 partridge is better than 9 chickens. It was an extremely rare delicacy. Whoosh! With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the five-colored partridge without leaving a trace. Is this guy going to eat the partridge's peerless king realm expert? Many people in the distance were dumbfounded, and they were scared out of their wits. They all remembered that demon god Lin was not only bold, but also had a big appetite. He had eaten black nightmare dog meat, golden crow meat. Now he actually wanted to eat the five-color partridge. Not long after, the white-haired woman was killed, and her neck was twisted, causing panic again. This was the third peerless king realm expert who died in Lin Sun's hands. To Lin Sun's surprise, the white-haired woman was a white-feathered, golden-eyed crane. It was extremely beautiful, but in Lin Sun's eyes, it was another ingredient that he had never tasted before. He waved his hand and put it away. Then he looked at the remaining 4 Extinction King realms and thought to himself, I wonder which clan these guys are from. These people had long been frightened by Lin Sun's bloody means. At this moment, when they were stared at by Lin Sun's strange eyes, their hair stood on end, and they all had the impulse to flee. In fact, at this point in the battle, they already had the intention to retreat. When Lin Sun attacked again, the man in the red robe did not say a word, but directly turned around and fled towards the top of the mountain. As the saying goes, when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Seeing this, how could the other 3 be stupid enough to fight desperately? They all chose to flee. Chapter 1208. 3 of the 7 supreme kings were killed one after another in the fierce battle. The remaining 4 fled without fighting. On the Flying Star Mountain, the experts of the major forces in the other areas panicked when they saw this. They screamed and fled. Even the supreme kings were no match for Lin Sun. Who dared to stay? At this moment, in everyone's eyes, Lin Sun was invincible. His invincible spirit was enough to make anyone feel cold. Die! Lin Sun's voice was cold. His figure disappeared into thin air. The next moment, he appeared behind a supreme king who was fleeing. His fist force burst out and destroyed everything. The supreme king was a handsome and extraordinary young man. He was extremely conceited before, but now he was desperate. Like a cornered beast, he tried his best to resist. But in a flash, he was killed by Lin Sun. Lin Sun's fist force made his whole body burst into pieces. Run! The Flying Star Mountain became more and more chaotic. People were crying and screaming everywhere. Before, their biggest reliance was the 7 supreme kings who were guarding here. But as these supreme kings were killed one after another, the strong people on the mountain all collapsed. They couldn't fight at all. Although Lin Sun was alone, he had the power to defeat everyone. Who could be his opponent? They even suspected that even if Wu Lingfeng, the 9th prince, came back, it would be difficult to suppress Lin Sun's arrogance. Die! Lin Sun's cold voice sounded again. He stretched his palms and fingers, and a burning galaxy spread out in the void. Stars burst and burned in it. It contained the real power of the law of fire, and its power was completely different from before. Boom! In the distance, a supreme king who had already rushed to the sky and fled in panic was drowned by a fiery galaxy before he could completely leave the range of the Flying Star Mountain. The thousands of stars in the galaxy burned and exploded, causing him to suffer unbearable damage in an instant. He died in a shrill and unwilling scream. His flesh and bones were all burned, and his body and soul were destroyed. Originally, Lin Sun wanted to chase the Supreme King who was fleeing in another direction. But when he noticed the trace of the man in the red robe, he immediately changed his mind. Whoosh! The next moment, he disappeared. The fiery robed man was the first to choose to flee. However, he didn't flee towards the outside of the mountain. Instead, he fled towards the summit of the mountain. At this time, he had already arrived in front of a spirit spring waterfall on the side of the mountain peak. Beneath the waterfall was a pool, and 3 yin-yang divine lotuses swayed within it, while flowing with yin and yang energy, causing it to seem divine and illusory. As soon as he arrived here, the fiery robed man flicked his sleeve, causing an expanse of divine light to sweep out and envelop the yin-yang divine lotus within the pool. However, at practically the exact same moment, A layer of terrifying restrictive formation energy suddenly appeared in the surroundings of the pool, and it spread out. Rumble. The divine light exploded, but the power of the restriction did not diminish. If the fiery-robed man had not dodged in time, he would have been hit. That damned Wu Lingfeng. He even set up a forbidden array here. The fiery-robed man's face darkened. He was flustered and exasperated. He realized that even though Wu Lingfeng had left, he had never trusted the forces that had pledged allegiance to him. Yin and Yang Divine Lotus? Lin Sun appeared. His black eyes flashed, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. This was a divine medicine that had long been extinct in the outside world. It was almost like a legend. But at this time, there were 3 yin-yang divine lotuses growing in the pool. It was no wonder that the meteor mountain was regarded as a great blessed land. It was really a heavenly place. Whoosh! The fiery-robed man fled without hesitation. Originally, he couldn't accept the fact that he was utterly defeated by Lin Sun. But now, he even failed to seize the yin-yang divine lotus and lost the perfect opportunity to escape, which made him so angry that he almost coughed up blood. Sure enough, as he expected, Lin Sun took advantage of this moment to kill him. There was no doubt that the fiery-robed man was killed. Before he died, he stared unwillingly at the 3 yin-yang divine lotuses in the pool, and the greatest hatred in his heart fell on Wu Lingfeng. Because in the fiery-robed man's view, if it wasn't for this guy secretly setting up a restriction that prevented him from seizing the yin-yang divine lotus, he would have had a chance to escape. Unfortunately, it was useless to regret. With the death of the fiery-robed man, only one of the 7 peerless kings finally escaped. Lin Sun didn't bother to chase after him, so he fixed his eyes on the yin-yang divine lotus in the pool. After a while, the restriction around the pool was successfully broken by Lin Sun, and the 3 yin-yang divine lotuses fell into Lin Sun's hands. With this divine medicine, it's sufficient for me to grasp another heavenly grand Tao. Lin Sun's black eyes were bright. The world's great ways were divided into 9 grades, but above the 9 grades, there are 99 supreme great ways. In the yin-yang divine lotus, there were 2 first-class great ways, yin and yang. If the 2 great ways were combined, it could be transformed into a supreme great way, Tai Chi. This great way, as early as ancient times, was regarded as a great way that reached the origin of heaven and earth. It had incredible magical effects. Next, Lin Sun didn't delay. He began to take action and began to sweep the Flying Star Mountain. As one of the few great blessed places in the distant Fire Realm, the fortunes and opportunities bred in the Flying Star Mountain were completely beyond Lin Sun's imagination. In the pine forest by the cliff, there was a golden pagoda pine on which a golden pagoda was condensed and the fragrance was drifting. It was also a kind of magic medicine. On the bank of the mountain stream, there was a herb garden, which was full of lights and colors, and the fragrance of medicine was rising, transforming into a rich and colorful spiritual mist. There were more than 10 king herbs alone. In addition, there were also ores containing rare spiritual materials, gurgling spiritual springs. All these were swept away by Lin Sun. The overmatches of the major forces on the mountain fled in panic like stray dogs. Some people wanted to fish in troubled waters and get some benefits before leaving. But because of their greed, they lost the chance to escape and were killed by Lin Sun. Later, Lin Sun came to the top of the mountain. There were palaces standing here, which originally belonged to different forces. When Lin Sun arrived, these palaces had long been empty. Although there were many scattered treasures left, most of them could hardly catch Lin Sun's eyes. Even so, Lin Sun still obtained a lot of spiritual materials for refining treasures, as well as various elixirs and treasures that had already been refined. Although most of them were useless to Lin Sun, their value was still amazing. When Lin Sun was about to leave the empty palace where the branch of Golden Crow was located, he suddenly noticed an ancient painting hanging on the wall. The painting was 4 feet long and 1 foot wide. It was old and yellowed, mottled with antiquity. In the painting, a thin figure was sitting on the starry sky in a leisurely manner, with a sense of great freedom and freedom. In his hand, there was a fishing rod. Below him was a mighty galaxy with twinkling stars, fishing above the starry sky. The painting was very ordinary, even a little dim and dilapidated, but the atmosphere in the painting could be described as shocking and shocking. Throughout the ages, who could sit in the starry sky and fish in front of a galaxy? What kind of realm did one have to reach to possess such a carefree, transcendent, and carefree bearing? Lin Sun's eyes were attracted at once, and his mind was touched. However, when he looked carefully, he found that only the outline of the thin figure's face was exposed, and it was extremely blurred. Similarly, in his hand, there was a fishing rod, but no fishing line. Was the meaning of this picture that willing people would take the bait? Lin Sun felt a jolt in his heart and probed it with his spiritual awareness. However, he didn't gain anything. It was as if this was just a simple ancient map. Lin Sun frowned and thought that the painting was hung here like a miscellaneous item, indicating that the branch of Golden Crow had not understood any secret from the painting. But why did he feel something was wrong? Lin Sun looked at the thin figure sitting cross-legged in the starry sky and stared at him carefully. In a trance, he had a familiar feeling in his heart. It was him. Suddenly, an idea flashed in Lin Sun's mind. He turned over his palm, and there was a copper piece in it. The copper piece was mottled with rust, and there was a painting engraved on it. An old man in a Taoist robe was riding on the back of a green ox, looking up at the sky in a leisurely manner. The painting was old and simple. After years of erosion, it was a little dim and blurred, but it was filled with a kind of supreme pressure. The pressure was vast and boundless, and it seemed as if the old man in a Taoist robe could come back to life at any time. Just his gaze alone made one's heart tremble. It was deep and vast, reflecting the ups and downs of the sun and moon. The changes of time and the mysteries of the great way of the world seemed to be contained in the depths of his eyes. This was the Taoist riding an ox. At that time, Lin Sun was chased by the Black Demon Tengu clan in the West Hung Territory, and he had to flee deep in the mountains. During this process, he had only released a blood leopard out of kindness. Who would have thought that the blood leopard would repay his kindness and give him this copper block with the Taoist riding a bull engraved on it? Lin Sun still remembered that after his investigation, he learned that this copper piece came from a practitioner who had died a long time ago. This person wanted to imitate the sages and cross the starry sky to go to the ruins of wonders, one of the 4 great Tao ruins in ancient times. But after a bitter search for 48,000 years, he didn't get what he wanted and finally died with regret. This copper piece was regarded as a relic by this cultivator, and it was obtained by the blood leopard by chance before it fell into Lin Sun's hands. It was precisely because of this that Lin Sun inferred that this Taoist riding an ox ought to be related to one of the 4 great Tao ruins, the ruins of wonders. At this moment, Lin Sun took out the copper piece and made a slight comparison. He instantly noticed that the old man in a Taoist robe riding an ox on the copper piece and the thin figure on the starry sky fishing were obviously the same person. This painting really didn't have a simple origin. Lin Sun was shocked in his heart. Suddenly, his palm heated up, and he saw that the copper piece that was mottled with rust actually flowed with a strand of divine aura at this moment, and it surged into the starry sky fishing. Instantly, a shocking scene appeared. The originally yellowish and old painting seemed as if it had come to life at this moment, and it was suffused with a divine sheen. In the painting, the figure sitting above the starry sky suddenly let out a hearty laugh. Interesting. After waiting for endless years, the fated person has finally come. In this case, those who are willing to take the bait. As he spoke, he lightly shook the fishing rod in his hand, and a resplendent star was caught in the vast and boundless Milky Way. P.S. The upcoming gifts have been confirmed. There are Kindles, USB drives, Panda enamel cups, power banks, T-shirts, and crossword coins. Other than the 2 Kindles, there are a lot of other gifts. They're all custom-made and not for sale. Chapter 1209. Whoosh. Without giving Lin any time to react, the figure in the scroll threw the fishing rod, and a star that was caught flew out of the scroll. The next moment, Lin only felt a buzz in his sea of consciousness, which seemed to be about to explode. It was impacted by a motley and huge power of inheritance. At the same time, all kinds of enlightenment came to his mind like a tide. Void-breaking finger of divination. There are 3 movements in the Tao of longevity. First, instant of spring and autumn. One finger turns the spring and autumn, seizes fate and judges life and death. Second, close yet worlds. One finger breaks the world. The enemy is close at hand, but I am at the end of the world. Nobody can get close. Third, infinite distance. Once the finger is out, there is no way to avoid it. After a long time, Lin woke up from the enlightenment. His heart was full of shock. He realized that this was a peerless Taoism inheritance, which was above the 5 realms and specially prepared for the king of longevity realm. Even though it was merely 3 moves, they contained boundless profundities within them. They were broad and profound, and possessed inconceivable might. Lin took a deep breath and suddenly looked up. He saw that the yellowish old scroll had already been restored to its original state. The figure was still in the starry sky, as if everything just now was just an illusion. But Lin knew that all this was true. Void-breaking finger of divination. Divination implied a perfect and flawless conception. This Tao art was grand, and it carried an extraordinary aura that was difficult to conceal. For example, the first movement, instant of spring and autumn, integrated the atmosphere of spring and autumn into one finger, which was enough to overturn the universe, rotate the world, and crush the opponent with a dignified and majestic momentum. For example, the second movement, close yet worlds. Even if the enemy came to attack, the opponent would not be able to touch him at all. This was a kind of defense method similar to Prison of Painting, but it was more magical and amazing. Imagine, how could the enemy get close to the place where he stood? For example, the third movement, infinite distance. No matter how far the enemy hid, there was no place that couldn't be reached by this finger. The 3 moves combined attack, defense, and pursuit in one. The essence contained in them moved Lin Sun's countenance. After a long time, Lin Sun calmed down from the excitement. Staring at the yellowed old scroll, Lin Sun roughly judged that it was left by the old man in Taoist robe who rode a green bull. There were mysteries hidden within, and it was definitely not ordinary. However, one needed to be fated to trigger such a mystery. Just like what had just happened. It was triggered by the Taoist riding an ox painting in his possession, causing him to inadvertently obtain the inheritance of the sky-shatter divination finger. Those who are willing to take the bait. It should be those who are fated to take the bait. Lin Sun murmured in his heart that this senior left such a painting. Perhaps it was to wait for a fated person, fishing in the starry skies, leaving behind an inheritance for those who are fated. Since the ancient times until now, how many people could possess such a transcendent and carefree bearing? Who was this old man in a Taoist robe who was riding on a green bull and looking up at the sky? Lin Sun quietly clenched the rusty copper in his hand. He had the premonition that when he had the chance to search for the ruins of profundity one day, then perhaps he would be able to find out the identity of this old man in Taoist robes. Immediately, another thing occurred to Lin Sun. Where did the branch of Golden Crow get this starry sky fishing painting? In the end, Lin Sun raised his hand and put away the ancient painting. I have to hurry up. When he walked out of the Hall of Golden Crow and stood on the Flying Star Mountain, a touch of determination flashed through Lin Sun's black eyes. Since he had started killing, there was no possibility of stopping. Whoosh! The next moment, his figure had disappeared. A quarter of an hour later, Wild Elephant Mountain, one of the small blessed lands in the distant Fire Realm, was now occupied by Xuandu Taoism sect and regarded as a place of residence. Lin Sun came and climbed the mountain to kill, as he did before. In less than 10 minutes, all the successors of Xuandu Taoism sect stationed on the Wild Elephant Mountain were killed. The mountain was stained with blood, and the ground was in a mess. When Lin Sun walked out of the Wild Elephant Mountain, he took away 9 king medicines and a batch of rare divine material, the flowing light cold essence, which was as valuable as the divine gold. The only pity was that there was no divine medicine on the wild elephant mountain. Then, Lin Sun set out on a journey to the territory of the Sea Soul clan. At this time, the news that Lin Sun broke into the territory of Golden Crow alone, killed many peerless kings, and bathed the Flying Star Mountain in blood had spread like a storm in the distant Fire Realm. In this battle, the Flying Star Mountain suffered a complete disaster. The major forces stationed there were defeated, and the casualties were incalculable. It was impossible to hide it. When the news came out, all parties were excited. The major forces distributed in the distant Fire Realm were all stunned and in disbelief. They couldn't sit still at all. One person took down the Flying Star Mountain. This seemed extremely inconceivable. Before, Lin Sun had been dormant in the Star Mountain. Although he killed several peerless kings one after another, it didn't cause too much of a stir, because there were similar bloody conflicts every day in the distant Fire Realm. Unexpectedly, today's news far exceeded everyone's expectations. Lin Sun was indeed worthy of the title of Devil God. He washed the Flying Star Mountain with blood all by himself. His straightforward and efficient manner caused a great commotion among the onlookers. The news seemed to have grown wings and swept across the land. Everywhere it went, it caused a commotion, and Lin Sun's name entered the vision of the major forces. Many people trembled and were dumbfounded. Some of the major forces even sent their forces to the Flying Star Mountain to investigate the specific news in order to confirm its authenticity. But not long after, the news that the wild Elephant Mountain was bathed in blood by demon god Lin spread, and it caused another uproar. Has demon god Lin gone mad? Many people felt their scalps go numb. Since the opening of the Upper 9 realms, there were bloody conflicts in the distant Fire Realm every day. But it was the first time for someone like Lin Sun to overturn an overlord force and push his way forward. Everyone knew that in the distant Fire Realm, the Flying Star Mountain, where the Golden Crow clan was located, could completely stand among the overlords. Only colossal forces like the profound Sikh Sword School, the Heavenless Sect, and the Tai Daoist sect could compete with them. But now the Flying Star Mountain and the Wild Elephant Mountain have been bathed in blood by demon god Lin alone. Who wouldn't be shocked? Even the major forces in the distant Fire Realm could not sit still. They sent their forces to investigate the news, eager to know what demon god Lin was up to. What? Even the Sea Soul clan's Ming Tsue Mountain was bathed in blood? God, demon god Lin, he's going to pierce through the heavens. In the following period of time, more news spread like a storm, causing many of the major forces to feel insecure. They were all wondering if they had offended demon god Lin in the past. There were also major forces that seized the opportunity to send their elite forces, planning to fish in troubled waters. After all, Lin Sun was only one person. It was destined that he could not occupy all the blessed lands that he had conquered one after another. And these unoccupied, blessed lands became delicious cakes in the eyes of the major forces. This was like a flock of vultures gnawing on the rotten meat left on the ground. What did you say? Demon god Lin attacked the Flying Star Mountain of the Golden Crow clan? At the same time, Wu Lingfeng and the others, who were waiting for Lin Sun's news on the Star Mountain, also got the news. They all flew into a rage, their faces turning green with anger. Who would have thought that when they came to raid Lin Sun's lair, their territory would be raided by Lin Sun? I'm so angry. Wu Lingfeng was so angry that he almost coughed up blood, his long hair flying in the air. Without hesitation, he led a group of powerful forces back at full speed. When they arrived at the Flying Star Mountain, Wu Lingfeng was a little stunned and almost couldn't believe it when he saw the blood and devastation all over the ground. This was actually true, especially when he saw that the 3 yin-yang divine lotuses within the pool had been completely plucked. His vision went black while the heavens and the earth spun, and he couldn't help but roar furiously and madly towards the sky. Their lair had been breached, and even their treasures had been plundered. Not a single decent thing was left. Ruthless. Too ruthless. When he walked into the hall and saw that even the ancient painting he had hung on the wall had disappeared, Wu Lingfeng was so angry that he almost went berserk. At the same time, the top figures of Xuandu Taoism sect, Sea Soul Clan, and moon-worshipping cult were also frightened, but they also secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, demon god Lin attacked the Flying Star Mountain. If he ran wild in their respective territories, the consequences would be unimaginable. But before they could rejoice for a long time, news came one after another that Wild Elephant Mountain and Mingzue Mountain were massacred. All of a sudden, they felt like they had been hit hard by a stick. They all looked ferocious, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They roared to find Lin Sun for revenge. Everyone, you've seen how rampant this demon is. If we don't kill him, how can we keep a foothold in the distant fire realm? Wu Lingfeng took a deep breath and controlled the anger and hatred in his heart with great perseverance. He said with a livid face, I suggest that we act together to kill this demon. We must not give him a chance to breathe and escape. Everyone nodded with a gloomy face. They also knew that Lin Sun couldn't be treated as an ordinary person since he could defeat the forces stationed on the Flying Star Mountain alone. This man was not only rampant, but his combat strength was also extremely terrifying. If it was a one-on-one fight, no one could be his opponent. Let's go. Wu Lingfeng didn't want to waste any more time, so he didn't even care about the Flying Star Mountain. Immediately, the others followed him with a murderous look. At the same time, Lin Sun stood in front of a beautiful spiritual mountain with a frown. This mountain was called Golden Mist, and it was originally the residence of the ancient mysterious Light Clan. But when Lin Sun arrived, he was surprised to find that there had been a large-scale bloody conflict not long ago. Smoke and dust were everywhere, and blood could be seen everywhere. Demon God Lin, you came at the right time. As you can see, Shinwen Sword House has wiped out the territory of the ancient mysterious Light Clan for you. A group of strong figures walked out of the mountain, led by a handsome young man in a crane cloak. He looked indifferently at Lin Sun, who had just arrived. Shinwen Sword House. Lin Sun thought of Ji Xingyao, an extremely proud girl. However, he had never had any relationship with Shinwen Sword House. Why did they take the initiative to help him? Don't get me wrong. We didn't help you for nothing. I heard that you just massacred the Flying Star Mountain, so you must have obtained a lot of benefits. Shouldn't you take out some divine medicine to express your gratitude? Chapter 12:10. The young man spoke casually with a playful look on his face. It was as if he took it for granted. His name was Mo Tianhe, an ancient freak from the profound Wen Sword House. Since he was born, he had never taken the top figures of the present age seriously. Now, he had reached the Peerless King realm. Not long ago, he took the test of the Li-Fire Battle Tablet and ranked 83rd on the Tianjiao Golden List. He was one of the most influential figures in the entire distant Fire realm. Even Wu Lingfeng, the 9th prince of the Golden Crow sect, couldn't enter his eyes. Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he smiled and said, Are you blackmailing me? Mo Tianhe shook his head and said, Blackmailing doesn't sound good. This is the way you should express your gratitude. After all, we help you eradicate the dwelling of the mysterious light ancient clan. Lin Sun sneered and said, Did I ask you to help me? Don't you think it's despicable for you to take this opportunity to blackmail me? Mo Tianhe's face darkened, and a touch of coldness flashed between his eyebrows. He said indifferently, Lin Sun, a wise man submits to circumstances. I've already given you enough face by asking you to pay some gratitude. If I want to deal with you, I don't need to do much. I just need to keep you here. When Wu Lingfeng and the others come, do you think you still have a chance to escape? This was a threat. The implication was that if Lin Sun obediently handed over some divine herbs, they wouldn't make things difficult for him. But if Lin Sun didn't hand them over, they could only keep him here. As time went by, Wu Lingfeng and the others would definitely come in time. At that time, it would be difficult to clean up the mess. Besides, you first destroyed the Flying Star Mountain, and then attacked the Wild Elephant Mountain and the Mingzue Mountain. You must have consumed a lot of energy, right? Before Lin Sun could speak, Tianhe said, It's not wise for you to be stubborn at this time. Don't just stand there. Hand over the divine herbs. The other experts of the profound one-sword house said one after another, as if they were sure that Lin Sun would win. Lin Sun frowned and asked in confusion, "Even if Wu Lingfeng and the others come, they won't give up if they see you occupy the Golden Mist Mountain, will they?" Mo Tianhe immediately burst out laughing. His face was filled with arrogance as he said indifferently, "You're very childish. You have no idea that after you attacked and conquered a few spiritual mountains, the other major forces have already moved out to fight for these territories. At this time, Wu Lingfeng and the others have no time, because there are too many opponents. They will only vent their anger on you." After a pause, there was a touch of pity in Mo Tianhe's eyes. He stared at Lin Sun and said, "Do you understand? You have unintentionally helped a lot of forces and acted as a vanguard. You are the vanguard in the front, and these forces are seizing territories from the rear and reaping the benefits without doing anything." At the end of his sentence, he could not help but sigh. To think that you, demon god Lin, are also an impressive and ferocious figure. But now, all your efforts have gone to the benefit of others. Lin Sun listened patiently and suddenly smiled. "So, are you going to take this opportunity to blackmail me?" Mo Tianhe frowned and said unhappily, "I'll say it again. This is not blackmail. If you're in the mood to continue, I'll accompany you. Anyway, the longer you delay, the greater the chance for Wu Lingfeng and the others to come in time." He was very calm, as if he was sure that he would win from beginning to end. The other experts of the profound one-sword house also looked playful. After hearing Mo Tianhe's words, they were not in a hurry anymore. At this time, Lin Sun made a decision and said, "You said that I unintentionally acted as a vanguard, but didn't you also act as my vanguard?" A trace of coldness flashed in Mo Tianhe's eyes. "What do you mean?" Lin Sun smiled slightly. "I took a fancy to the Golden Mist Mountain, but you got it before me. I don't blame you for being nosy, but you must hand over the treasures you got on the Golden Mist Mountain, and then get out of here." The word "get out" was spoken casually. The faces of Mo Tianhe and the others darkened. They had already spoken to such an extent, but not only did demon god Lin not know his place, he even dared to blackmail them. This was intolerable. "Are you sure?" Mo Tianhe's eyes were like lightning, and they emitted a divine light that was like a blade. In an instant, his power became extremely terrifying. Lin Sun looked up at the sky, and then he withdrew his gaze and said, "There's not much time left. If you continue to be so long-winded, I might choose to go to the blessed land of the profound one-sword house." He didn't conceal his threat at all and seemed extremely magnanimous. This infuriated Mo Tianhe, causing his face to become even colder, and he said, "Very well, it seems that you intend to become the public enemy of all the forces in the distant fire realm. Then don't blame me for being rude." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, he had already stepped forward. An ancient sword suddenly appeared behind him, and it was brilliant like the sun and moon as it slashed down. The sword intent was so strong that it caused the world to dim. Clang! Lin Sun swung his fist horizontally, and the sword and fist collided, causing boundless light to erupt. Clang! Mo Tianhe's expression remained unchanged, and another ancient sword flashed out behind him. Its momentum was like a moving mountain and river, and it was majestic and vast as it crushed the void. At the same time, the ancient sword that was defeated by Lin Sun swept up again and slashed from one side. Its speed and decisiveness far exceeded that of an ordinary peerless king. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. He was a little surprised, and then he felt relieved. If Mo Tianhe didn't have the strength, how could he dare to extort him so openly? Boom! Without holding back, Lin Sun also exerted his true strength. The light around him flowed, and he deduced the mystery of the 9 strikes for shaking the heavens. "You're overestimating yourself." Seeing this, Mo Tianhe sneered. With a wave of his sleeve, a group of ancient swords swept out. Together with the 2 swords from before, there were a total of 36 swords, and they turned into a fierce and terrifying sword formation to kill. The ancient swords were all different. Some were brilliant like the sun and moon, some were towering like mountains, some were turbulent like the sea, and some were like the spring breeze and rain. There were myriad phenomena, and they echoed each other from a distance. In a trance, it was like 36 peerless sword cultivators had attacked together, and they deduced earth-shattering sword intent with the intention of slashing the world. Mo Tianhe was like the king of swords. He controlled all the swords and swept through the surroundings with extremely powerful might. He really deserved his reputation for being ranked on the Tianjiao Golden Ranking, and he had real confidence. Bang! 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 The sword chi crisscrossed and slashed down dazzlingly, and the power it emitted caused the world to fall into chaos. Rocks exploded, the ground was covered with ravines, and the void was torn open like a canvas. Only senior brother Mo Tianhe could deduct the power of the great void sword-seeking formation to such an extreme extent. The nearby experts of the profound Sikh sword school had excited expressions on their faces, and they were shocked by this scene. Demon God Lin can die without regrets under such a sword formation. Some people were looking forward to it. Boom! The dense rain of swords poured down, and it deduced infinite killing intent. It was profound and unfathomable, and almost drowned Lin Sun's figure. After a short confrontation, Lin Sun realized that he had to go all out in order to defeat Mo Tianhe by relying on the 9 strikes for shaking heavens and the 9 changes of the Calamity Dragon. But it was slightly difficult to kill Mo Tianhe. Even though Mo Tianhe was extremely conceited, Lin Sun had to admit that Mo Tianhe was a formidable figure that he'd encountered since he'd grasped the King Dao laws, and Mo Tianhe was far stronger than an ordinary peerless king. But that was all. Clang! In the next moment, the snow-white broken blade flashed out, and it revealed a shocking sharpness. Ah, Demon God Lin, you finally can't help but use your weapon? That's right, otherwise, it would be too boring to suppress you. Mo Tianhe chuckled with a calm expression, and his entire body emitted a fierce sword intent that shot into the sky as he deduced the 36 ancient swords to the extreme. Every single sword strike contained earth-shattering might. Even though he was conceited, he knew that Lin Sun had utilized his strongest technique at this moment. So he didn't dare be careless in his heart, and his aura grew stronger and stronger. Boring! A cold sheen flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes, and then he heard the broken blade hum before it swept out like a river of stars. Star fishing slash. The broken blade, shrouded in the power of the Tao of water, showed an invincible momentum. It moved across the void like the night had fallen, and it slashed down the stars in the sky. Although it was a vision, it was extremely horrifying. Bang! An ancient sword was shattered and wailed violently. In the distance, Mo Tianhe's body stiffened, and his chi and blood fluctuated. He suddenly restrained the contempt on his face and became serious. However, what happened next was completely beyond his expectation. The broken blade moved as if it was unstoppable, and it revealed great and boundless power. Bang! 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 The Taishu Xian seeking sword formation that was originally under his perfect control was completely messed up. The ancient swords wailed as they were shattered and scattered. The formation was scattered all over the place, and the formation was scattered. At the same time, Mo Tianhe seemed to have been struck by lightning again and again. He staggered back step by step, and his chi and blood were shaken to the point that he almost coughed up blood. His expression changed from seriousness to solemnity, and then from solemnity to shock, rage, and unsightly. He seemed to be in disbelief. The experts of the Xianwen sword school who were excited in the distance also changed their expressions at this moment. They were caught off guard and couldn't believe it. How could Demon Lin be so powerful? After all, Mo Tianhe had a chance not long ago, and his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had reached the fulfillment of the King of Extinction Realm, and he was only one step away from triggering the first longevity test. It could be said that in the distant Fire Realm, in terms of cultivation alone, there were no more than 5 King of Extinction Realm cultivators with such cultivation. But now, he still couldn't suppress Demon Lin, which was too unexpected. Do you think it's interesting now? Lin Sun asked at the same time. As he spoke, the broken blade swept through the air, and a burning sun cut rose up like a big sun exploding in the void, completely destroying the sword formation. Puff! Mo Tianhe couldn't help coughing up blood again. His hair was disheveled, and his face was full of surprise and confusion. He was not convinced of his previous conceit and calmness. He said, You had just stepped into the King of Extinction Realm, but why are you so powerful? There are still many things you don't know. Is it interesting to ask you? Lin Sun asked with a smile, and his black eyes were deep. Chapter 12:11. Dang! Mo Tianhe exerted all his strength to resist, but in the end, the 36 ancient swords were slashed apart by the broken blade, creating a deafening collision sound. Mo Tianhe hurriedly dodged, barely dodging this strike. However, he'd already suffered a heavy injury. The skin, tendons, and bones in his entire body hurt intensely, and the vital energy and blood in his body roiled without end. As soon as he steadied himself, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. The disciples of the profound Inquiry Sword School were dumbfounded. Mo Tianhe was so arrogant and powerful that he was like a king of swords. However, in merely a short moment, he was beaten to the point of being powerless to resist. His hair was disheveled, and he dodged in a sorry state while coughing up blood incessantly. He was like a completely different person from before. Is it interesting? Lin Sun rushed up, pressed his palm and fingers, and the Swanee seal emerged. With a bang, he took the opportunity to smash Mo Tianhe into the golden mist mountain not far away. His entire body was imprinted on the wall, and it looked very strange. Interesting, stop fighting. The disciples of the profound Sikh sword school shouted. All of them realized that Mo Tianhe would definitely suffer if the battle continued. Then let's do it again. Lin Sun smiled. As he spoke, he had already rushed to Mo Tianhe. He grabbed Mo Tianhe's ankle and smashed him to the ground like a stick. Bang! The ground cracked, and Mo Tianhe's handsome face had an intimate contact with the ground. He was in so much pain that his whole body twitched, and he let out a miserable howl. Looking at him again, he was covered in dirt and had a bloody nose and swollen face. It was simply too miserable. Lin Sun, you've gone too far. Mo Tianhe roared. He was about to go crazy. I'm just bullying you. What can you do to me? Lin Sun shook his wrist and exerted force in his palm. Mo Tianhe's body was shaken violently. He foamed at the mouth, became dizzy, and rolled his eyes. There was a series of crashing sounds, and some treasures fell to the ground. Thump! Then, Mo Tianhe was thrown away. Lin Sun's eyes fell on the treasures on the ground. The disciples of the profound Inquiry Sword School in the distance gasped while their hearts trembled. Fiend God Lin is simply too brutal, but none of them dared to step forward to stop him. Even Mo Tianhe was not a match for him. How could they dare to look for trouble? This storage bracelet is not bad. Soon, Lin Sun selected his spoils of war, which was a simple emerald green bracelet, and put it away without hesitation. Seeing this, Mo Tianhe let out a heart-wrenching scream and rushed up to fight Lin Sun desperately. Because the storage bracelet contained all of his treasures, it was where his entire fortune was. Bang! Lin Sun kicked him away and said, Don't make me kill you. Mo Tianhe was stunned at first, and then his expression changed. Finally, he was disappointed. He was not stupid. He was just angry just now. Only now did he realize that if Lin Sun wanted to kill him, he could have done it just now instead of waiting until now. However, when he saw his storage bracelet falling into Lin Sun's hands, he still felt heartbroken and his heart was bleeding. At the same time, Lin Sun was also amazed that there were 2 miraculous medicines in the storage bracelet, which were not inferior to star fruit. Apart from that, there were also more than 10 types of king medicines and a large batch of spiritual materials that were extremely rare in the outside world. Their value was immeasurable. I didn't notice that this fellow is really rich. Lin Sun stroked his chin and was considering whether he should kidnap Mo Tianhe and extort him in the territory of profound inquisition. Mo Tianhe's hair stood on end. What's with that look? Does he think I'm a fat sheep that can be taken at will? That's simply too detestable. As an ancient freak that came from the profound Sikh sword school, he'd always looked down upon the peak figures of the current generation. Yet now, he'd been suppressed and treated like a fat sheep. This was undoubtedly too humiliating, and it tortured him to the point he was on the verge of collapse. The expressions of the disciples of profound inquisition in the distance flickered, and they were extremely nervous. It could be said that demon god Lin could decide life and death with a single thought. How about this? I'll let Mo Tianhe go if you give me another miraculous medicine and 10 king medicines. Lin Sun made a decision. Everyone was stunned at first, and then they were so depressed that they almost coughed up blood. Does this fellow think miraculous medicines are cabbages? That they could be obtained at will? Not to mention miraculous medicines. Even king medicines can't be obtained at will. Do you think his life isn't worth this? Asked Lin Sun. Mo Tianhe was infuriated to the point he almost gnashed his teeth into pieces. Can this even be compared? Lin Sun, it was indeed my heart control sword house that was in the wrong this time. Just as you said, I'll compensate you accordingly. Right at this moment, a clear and melodious voice resounded. Along with this voice, a graceful figure walked out from Gold Mist Mountain. She had curved brows, snow-white skin, and a pair of clear eyes that were jet black like paint. She wore white clothes and carried an ancient sheathed sword on her back. Her clothes fluttered as she walked, and she was like a female sword immortal that had walked out from the heavens. She was peerlessly beautiful, elegant, and otherworldly. Ji Xingyao, the current saintess of the number 1 sect in Shiheng world, profound inquisition. A trace of a daze flashed through Lin Sun's heart when they met again after a few years. In the past, Ji Xingyao liked to wear a black dress and had undisguised pride. She was like the moon that hung high in the sky, and she emanated a peerless, elegant bearing that caused others to turn their heads. But now, she wore snow-white clothes, black hair that flowed down like a waterfall, and her figure was otherworldly and graceful. She was like an otherworldly, celestial maiden that emanated an ethereal aura. She didn't have that radiant pride anymore, but it was even more impossible to ignore. It was even to the extent that her otherworldly beauty would make most cultivators feel ashamed of their inferiority. Obviously, Lin Sun had been constantly transforming in the past few years, and Ji Xingyao had similarly advanced by leaps and bounds on her path of cultivation. All the disciples of the profound inquisition heaved a sigh of relief in unison when they saw her appear. Mo Tianhe, who lay on the ground, had a stiff expression. He was in a sorry state at this moment, and his face was covered in dirt. But Ji Xingyao noticed this. He was slightly unable to raise his head. You were on this mountain just now, but why didn't you show yourself? Lin Sun asked curiously. Speaking of which, we can be considered as old acquaintances. Even though we can't be considered as friends, it's not good to avoid each other, right? Ji Xingyao was obviously stunned. Old acquaintances? As soon as these words were spoken, she couldn't help but recall the first time she met Lin Sun. This fellow had just arrived at the ancient desolation and was unknown. But he fought her to a draw at that time. It was precisely because of this battle that Ji Xingyao remembered Lin Sun. It couldn't be helped. Lin Sun could be considered as the first fellow who had bumped her, but so it was difficult for her not to remember him. After that, she had met Lin Sun several times in succession, but every time they met, it wasn't pleasant, and it even made her gnash her teeth with hatred sometimes. However, in recent years, she had been wholeheartedly cultivating, and she had long since become indifferent to the past. She had thought that her temperament had transformed and was different from the past. But who would have thought that Lin Sun's words of old acquaintance directly caused her to have the impulse to gnash her teeth again, and even the state of mind that she had tempered with great difficulty showed signs of anger. This fellow has already stepped into the terminating king realm, so how can he still be so shameless? Who is an old acquaintance of him? If others heard this, they would probably think that I have an impure relationship with him. Ji Xingyao took a deep breath, and her clear eyes were cold as she controlled her emotions and said, "Is this question important?" Lin Sun laughed heartily and said, "Looks like you've gotten over it. That's good. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. I told you that what happened all those years ago was a misunderstanding, but you just can't get over it and regard me as a scoundrel. Didn't I accidentally during the battle?" Ji Xingyao was instantly embarrassed and annoyed when she saw that he was going to mention that embarrassing matter again, and she was utterly unable to control her state of mind. She reprimanded in a clear voice, "Shut up, you. Why are you still as shameless and shameless as before?" She was originally like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world, ethereal and transcendent. But at this moment, her almond eyes were wide open, her black brows were raised, and she gritted her teeth with hatred. Even the other disciples of the profound Inquisition sword school had never seen such an attitude, especially when the conversation between her and Lin Sun was filled with many thought-provoking words, such as old acquaintance, scoundrel, misunderstanding. It was difficult for others to not have wild thoughts. Everyone, including Mo Tianhe, was surprised and bewildered. What's going on? Ji Xingyao was the current saintess of the profound Inquisition sword school. She was pure, and possessed peerless elegance. Countless people adored and respected her, and they took her to be a goddess that could be admired from afar and not desecrated. If news of this were to spread, then it was very likely that Ji Xingyao and demonic god Lin were entangled in some matters. Then it would absolutely be an extremely shocking event that would make many go mad. Lin Sun was slightly astounded, and then he sighed lightly. "Alas, I guess wrongly. So it turns out that you haven't forgotten what happened in the past. Actually, all of us were very young at that time, and it's excusable for us to make some mistakes inadvertently. Just like this time, when I found out that these fellows were disciples of your profound Inquisition sword school, I didn't slaughter them, and wasn't it because we were acquaintances?" As soon as these words were spoken, it caused the expressions of Mo Tianhe and the others to become even more unusual. Indeed, with demonic god Lin's ferocious temper, it was obviously very unusual for him to not slaughter them earlier. Now it made sense that he hadn't done so out of consideration for Ji Xingyao. In this way, it could be inferred that the relationship between the two of them was definitely not ordinary. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but have a complicated expression. Ji Xingyao was a fairy-like figure that they admired and respected in their hearts. But now, she was entangled with demonic god Lin. This made them feel sour, envious, and a little depressed. Ji Xingyao didn't know what they were thinking. If she knew, she would definitely be driven mad with anger. Even so, when she heard Lin Sun's words, she was so angry that she couldn't help but laugh. "So, I have to be deeply grateful to you?" Lin Sun shook his head and waved his hand with a magnanimous look. "Not really. It's enough that you know the reason why I did this." Ji Xingyao suddenly opened her eyes wide and felt very depressed in her heart. Didn't this guy realize that she was mocking him? She was about to say something when she saw Lin Sun's black eyes narrow. He suddenly raised his head to look into the distance and said, "This is not a place to stay for a long time. Miss Ji, why don't we talk somewhere else?" "In your dreams." Ji Xingyao was so angry that she blurted out. This guy actually wanted to talk with her. Wasn't he afraid that she couldn't control herself and would punish him? Chapter 12:12. Although Lin Sun felt that Bai Lingshi's angry and embarrassed look was quite attractive, he had no time to appreciate it. In his perception, monstrous killing intent was coming from a very far place at a high speed. Lin Sun was shocked by the strong killing intent. He realized that there were definitely many opponents coming this time, and there were many masters. "Well, I'll catch up with you next time." Lin Sun made a decision and turned away. "You," Ji Xingyao cried. "Anything else?" Lin Sun looked back at her. Ji Xingyao was stunned and then snorted, "Don't you want compensation?" Lin Sun smiled. "Forget it, as long as you don't get angry with me." As he spoke, his figure had disappeared in the distance. "Bah, who would be angry with a rascal like you?" Ji Xingyao snorted. Her pretty face was inexplicably hot and ashamed. This guy couldn't say anything good. Senior Sister G, you, and Demon Lin. Someone couldn't help asking. But before he finished, Ji Xingyao interrupted him coldly. There's no relationship at all. If you dare to gossip, don't blame me for not considering our friendship. There was a trace of anger in her voice. But in the ears of others, it seemed that she was trying to cover up something. Ji Xingyao also noticed that everyone looked at her strangely. She couldn't help but feel annoyed. She took a deep breath and calmed down, saying, "It's time for us to go." In the distance, the amazing killing intent spread like a black cloud and covered them. If they didn't leave now, there would be endless troubles in the future. What about the Golden Mist Mountain? Someone asked. Whoever wants it can have it, Ji Xingyao said quickly. Immediately, they chose to leave. However, halfway, Ji Xingyao chose to leave alone. Junior Sister Ji, where are you going? Mo Tina asked. I'm going to do something. Ji Xingyao answered without looking back. As she spoke, her clothes fluttered, and she disappeared into the distance like a rainbow. What's Senior Sister Ji going to do? Many people were puzzled. It must have something to do with Demon Lin. Mo Tina's face was gloomy. Boom! Not long after they left, many figures of King Realm descended near the Golden Mist Mountain. It was as if dark clouds covered the earth, and its momentum was astonishing. He got a head start again. Damn it. Continue the chase. His roar surged through the surroundings, causing the space in the surroundings to tremble, and it revealed boundless rage and hatred. However, Lin Sun had already stopped the bloodbath in blessed land of Spiritual Mountain. In the following pursuit, they had completely lost track of Lin Sun. What infuriated Wu Lingfeng and the others the most was that the other major forces in the distant fire region had brazenly attacked at this time, taking advantage of the situation to plunder the conquered blessed lands. Because of this, Wu Lingfeng and the others were in a difficult situation. No matter how much they hated Lin Sun, they knew that they had lost the chance to kill him. So they changed their action decisively and went to seize the blessed land that originally belonged to them. Today, the distant Fire Realm was in a state of turmoil. According to some statistics, in less than 4 hours, Lin Sun alone conquered the 4 blessed lands, namely Flying Star Mountain, Wild Elephant Mountain, Mingtsue Mountain, and Xingsha Mountain. Everywhere, blood flowed like rivers and smoke filled the air. In less than 4 hours, there were no less than 15 peerless King Realm strongmen who died in Lin Sun's hands. It was shocking. In the upper 9 realms, the peerless King Realm was like the existence standing on the top of the mountain. They could roar in all directions and gallop in all directions. Ordinary King Realm strongmen were no different from chickens and dogs in their eyes. Not to mention those who hadn't been promoted to King Realm strongmen. They were nothing. But Lin Sun killed all the peerless King Realm strongmen like tearing a painting. This caused a great shock and horror to other peerless King Realm strongmen. At the same time, because of Lin Sun's revenge, there was a greater bloody storm in the distant fire region. All the major forces took the opportunity to seize the conquered blessed lands. Wu Lingfeng and the other major forces were naturally unwilling to give up, which led to the collision between the major forces. However, all this had nothing to do with Lin Sun. After leaving, he went straight back to Star Mountain. But Star Mountain had already been turned into a ruin, and even the primitive spiritual veins inside had suffered irreparable damage. Seeing this, Lin Sun could only shake his head. He didn't sigh with emotion, but just felt a little pity. Whose fault was it that such a blessed land was destroyed? With such a big movement, whether it is a Lu or the Old Toad, as long as they come to the distant fire region, they should know that I am here. Lin Sun was lost in thought. This time, the revenge against Golden Crow and other major forces had not been carried out to the end, but the effect had been achieved. If he continued to fight, he would be in danger. The enemies were not fools, and they would definitely fight back in every possible way. However, Lin Sun didn't intend to give up. If you don't kill a snake, you will be harmed. Years of experience and lessons had made Lin Sun deeply understand that he must not show any mercy to his enemies. Now, It was the second year since he entered the peerless domain. There were still 8 years left for him to practice and become stronger. At the same time, there were also opportunities to settle accounts with those enemies. I'm afraid that Yun Qingbai has already set foot in the Peerless King realm. If he knows that I am in the distant fire region, will he dare to come to see me? Lin Sun thought of Yun Qingbai again. He had made a decision that when he reached the realm of the Tao of the real dragon and star obliteration, he would go to find Yun Qingbai and completely end this blood feud that had been postponed for many years. Suddenly, Lin Sun felt something and woke up from his thoughts. He looked into the distance with a trace of surprise in his eyes. There, Ji Xingyao, dressed in white, with black hair like a waterfall, walked in the void like a fairy in a painting. "Miss Ji, are you here to continue chatting with me?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. Ji Xingyao stared at Lin Sun coldly and said, "Do you think I'm here to chat with you?" This guy was so annoying. How could the dignified demon Lin be so frivolous? Before Lin Sun could speak, she directly stated her purpose and said, "A few days ago, I entered the forbidden land of Styx and met a person by chance." Lin Sun showed interest in her words. He knew very well what a horrible place the forbidden land of Styx was. But why did Ji Xingyao mention this to him? It was a young man in a green robe. He was quite handsome, but he was too proud and conceited, Ji Xingyao recalled. It was the old toad. Lin Sun was shocked. He had long suspected whether the old toad had been transmitted to the forbidden land of Styx like himself when he went to the distant fire realm from the realm of immortals. What Ji Xingyao said at the moment undoubtedly proved this. However, perhaps because he was too proud, he was accidentally involved in a dangerous place. When Ji Xingyao said this, Lin Sun couldn't help but say, "Dangerous place? Miss Ji, can you explain it clearly?" He was a little worried. Ji Xingyao had intended to ridicule Lin Sun, but when she saw his frowning and serious look, she immediately held back. She sorted out her thoughts and told him the whole story of her meeting the old toad. It turned out that about half a month ago, Ji Xingyao had gone to a mysterious canyon in the forbidden land of Styx to explore opportunities. That mysterious canyon was barren and shrouded in bloody mist all year round, which was extremely strange and ominous. Just when Ji Xingyao was hesitating whether to go in and have a look, she heard an excited cry. Walking into the canyon filled with bloody mist, she found that there was a dry well in the canyon, from which the cry for help came. Then, Ji Xingyao saw the old toad trapped in the dry well. He was extremely embarrassed, with his hands and legs supporting the wall of the well. His body was entangled with fine bloody chains, which were dragging him to the depths of the dry well. He looked extremely embarrassed and strenuous. In particular, his ankle was firmly grasped by a pale, shriveled and old hand, which made him unable to move at all. He could only shout loudly. Ji Xingyao had intended to save him, but was stopped by the old toad, who said that this was the divine blood well, the most horrible and weird place in the world. Speaking of this, Ji Xingyao snorted coldly. This guy's been trapped, but his tone is very arrogant. He said that if I approached him, I would not only fail to save him, but also harm him. Lin Sun hurriedly said, "This guy's like this. Don't bother with him. What's next?" Ji Xingyao said casually, "I'm leaving." "Leaving?" Lin Sun was stunned. Ji Xingyao said, "If I didn't leave, could I still stay there? But before I left, that guy asked me to pass a message to you." "What message?" Lin Sun's heart tightened. Ji Xingyao's expression was a little strange. She imitated the tone of the old toad at that time and said, "He said to tell Lin Sun that I found a great opportunity for him and ask him to come and save me quickly." Lin Sun's face darkened. This guy was already in danger, but he still spoke so arrogantly. Was he really not afraid of death? He took a deep breath and said, and then, after that, he gave up resisting and was dragged into the depths of the well, and no trace of him could be found anymore. I suspect that there's probably another world at the bottom of the so-called Nether God blood well, Ji Xingyao said in a low voice. Knowing this, Lin Sun also felt a little heavy in his heart. The old toad actually entered the divine blood well, which he had never thought before. Taking a deep breath, he cupped his hands and said seriously, "Thank you, Miss G, for telling me all this. I will repay you in the future." This news was really too important. If Ji Xingyao deliberately concealed it, it was very likely that the time to save the old toad would be delayed. Ji Xingyao raised the corners of her mouth and said with a playful smile, "I didn't know that you, demon god Lin, also know how to be grateful." Lin Sun was not in the mood to joke. He said, "Miss Ji, can you tell me the specific location of the divine blood well?" Ji Xingyao said, "This is why I came to you. I have a remnant of a scroll in my hand, which has been preserved from the ancient times to the present. Some secrets are recorded in it, and it is very likely to be related to the mysterious place under the divine blood well." Lin Sun suddenly understood. "So, you also plan to explore it again?" Ji Xingyao nodded. "Yes, what do you think?" Lin Sun, of course, had no problem and happily agreed. P.S. Tonight at 7 o'clock, the goldfish will be waiting for everyone in the Zhongheng Novels app. At that time, there will be an activity post pinned to the top. Everyone can ask questions in it and fight for the floor. 66, 100, 188, 266, 300. There will be prizes sent out on these floors. Those who ask questions and are answered by the goldfish will have a greater chance to win exclusive customized prizes. Chapter 12-13. Ji Xingyao said, "Well, let's set off in 10 days." Going with Lin Sun was equivalent to having one more powerful companion who could take care of him when he went to the forbidden land of Styx. 10 days later, Lin Sun frowned. Ji Xingyao was stunned and realized that Lin Sun didn't know much about the forbidden land of Styx. She explained, "There is only one chance to enter the forbidden land of Styx every 10 days. At other times, the whole forbidden land of Styx will be covered by a layer of strange power. Once you get close to it, you will meet with misfortune and die." Lin Sun's black eye shrank. Was there such a thing? He walked in the forbidden land of Styx for a day and a night and experienced countless fatal dangers. But from the beginning to the end, he did not sense any strange or ominous power. It seems that there are still many secrets and taboos that I don't know. Lin Sun's heart sank. The more dangerous and strange the forbidden land of Styx was, the more likely it was that old Toad would be in danger. But it was useless for Lin Sun to be impatient. He had to wait for 10 days before taking action. This guy is blessed by God, and he got the inheritance of Chun Linkong, the burning immortal. He won't die so easily. Lin Sun could only comfort himself in this way. Ji Xingyao didn't stay any longer. After making an appointment with Lin Sun, she left. In fact, from the fact that she took the initiative to tell Lin Sun that Old Toad was in danger, Lin Sun knew that she had indeed let go of the misunderstanding of that year and no longer hated him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done this. Lin Sun was very happy to see this. The forbidden land of Styx was known as the Great Danger in the distant Fire Realm. On its periphery, there was a vast primeval forest with towering ancient trees that covered the sky and the sun. It was shrouded in darkness all year round. Lin Sun came and stood on the periphery of the forest. His spiritual awareness spread out. When it poured into the vast primeval forest, he immediately felt an unspeakable oppressive aura, which made his breath stagnate. But this didn't affect Lin Sun. As he ran the meditating magic, his huge spiritual awareness spread into the depths of the forest like a tide. During this process, the oppressive and ghastly aura grew stronger and stranger. This made the pressure on Lin's mind increase rapidly. His whole body was taut like a fully drawn bowstring. His chi moved silently and ran loudly to resist the pressure. Boom! From a distance, Lin Sun's black hair was flying in the air, and his whole body was flowing with Taoist light. His fierce fighting intent was like a rainbow piercing through the void, collapsing the clouds in all directions. It was as if he was fighting against the strongest opponent. If other Apex Kings were to witness this scene, they would surely be awed by the aura emanating from Lin Sun's body. He was too strong, like a demon god that held up the backbone of the world. At the same time, Lin Sun's soul was shaking violently, as if there were the cries of demons and saints. His sea of consciousness was filled with mountains of white bones, seas of corpses, the collapse of heaven and earth, and the destruction of all living things. Everything was shaking his mind and assaulting his will. In the end, his sea of consciousness was filled with buzzing roars. The bloody scroll seemed to want to suck his soul into it. Suddenly, a bloody river emerged in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness, in which there were strange and ominous corpses. A Buddha died, with a hole pierced through his eyebrows, and his face was full of anger. A dragon-like body was broken inch by inch, looming in the blood river, winding tens of thousands of meters long. There were saints in feather clothes and crowns. There were strange beasts with Taoist patterns on their foreheads. Without exception, they were all dead, floating and sinking in the blood river. They were like the destination of death. Boom! Before Lin Sun could see clearly, he felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness. He was hit by a terrible cold force, which made him groan and withdraw his spiritual awareness without hesitation. After that, the phenomenon from before receded like tide water and vanished. At this time, Lin Sun was soaked with cold sweat. His face was slightly pale, and his deep eyes flashed with fear. That river of blood, could it be the Nether River? At this point, Lin Sun completely understood that Ji Xingyao was right. If he entered the Styx River at this time, he would definitely encounter an accident. The power covered in it was so strange and ominous that he couldn't compete with it. Whoosh, after a while, Lin Sun let out a long breath of turbid air and restrained his aura. After pondering for a moment, his figure flashed and charged into the primitive forest. This forest was just the periphery of the Styx River. Although there were many dangers, they didn't pose too much threat to Lin Sun. From today on, I'll practice here. Lin Sun made a decision. If he made full use of 10 days, it was enough to improve his combat power to a higher level. The primitive forest was full of danger, but for Lin Sun, it was a perfect place to practice martial arts and comprehend Taoism. The King Realm was divided into 3 levels: the initial realm, the middle realm, and the later realm. When the King Realm was completed, the Taoist seed in the body would also be completed. At that time, the Taoist test of longevity would be faced. If one passed the test, he could be called the first tribulation of longevity, and the Taoist seed in the body would also transform and give birth to the Taoist root. The Taoist root was regarded as the root of heaven and earth. It was rooted in the road of longevity, which meant that one had taken a new level on the road of longevity. If one couldn't pass the test, his cultivation would stop there, and there would be no hope of improvement, or he would die. That was the risk and test one had to bear in order to cultivate immortality. It was true that the King Realm had seen through life and death and was not afraid of the erosion of time. His soul was immortal and his life was immortal. But if he couldn't pass the test, it was doomed to be in vain. Now, Lin Sun's cultivation had reached the initial realm, and he could enter the middle realm at any time. However, the combat power of the Peerless King Realm was not measured by cultivation. In other words, no one could give a specific standard for the combat power of the Peerless King Realm until now. Because this realm was unprecedented, even the sages didn't dare to define it. 3 days later, in the forest, Lin Sun sat cross-legged. The aura around him was like a furnace, rising to a higher level in an instant. The aura released made the forest rustle. The middle realm of King Realm. Lin Sun had expected that the breakthrough in cultivation was not hard at all. It was a matter of course. Buzzing in the darkness around the forest, a thunder-like buzzing sounded. Immediately, a group of fist-sized red, 6-winged blood mosquitoes rushed out and rushed towards Lin Sun with ferocious aura. 6-winged blood mosquitoes. Lin Sun opened his black eyes, which were calm. These were terrifying creatures that covered the surroundings of this primitive mountain forest. The slightest bit of movement would draw their attention. They were extremely difficult to deal with. When he entered the distant fire realm for the first time, he was chased by the six-winged blood mosquitoes. His body was not only pierced with many bloody holes, but also invaded by the poison. He was extremely embarrassed. But this time, it was completely different. Sitting on the ground, Lin Sun stretched out his right index finger and sketched a light and mysterious track in the void. At the same time, the strong power around him also ran in a strange way with this stroke, roaring and gathering at his fingertips. Then, he flicked his fingers gently. The nearby, towering ancient trees, huge python-like vines, tall weeds, and wildflowers all grew crazily and were full of vitality, as if they were in the vicissitudes of time. The moment Lin Sun pointed his finger, all the ancient trees, vines, weeds, and wildflowers withered and turned into flying ash, scattering in the air. In an instant, spring and autumn rotated, and everything was overturned. It was like the history of all ages gathered in one finger, which was a terrible scene. The vitality of the six-winged blood mosquitoes, rushing nearby, suddenly dried up. Their bodies were shriveled as if their essence, chi, and spirit were sucked out, and then they fell to the ground. Looking again, within a radius of thousands of meters, there was no grass growing. Everything turned into nothingness, as if it had been erased. Such a scene made Lin Sun's eyes flash with a touch of brilliance. The first move of Dian void-breaking finger, instant of spring and autumn. One finger turned spring and autumn, seized fate, and judged life and death. This blow seemed to integrate the atmosphere of spring and autumn into one finger, which could overturn the universe, reverse the withering and flourishing, and crush everything with a dignified and majestic momentum. Lin Sun had just started to comprehend this move and only master a little bit of it, but the power it exerted was completely beyond Lin's expectation. It was more than powerful, it was simply nature-defying. This Taoism was inherited from the Starry Sky fishing map, and there were only 3 moves in total. But each move contained all phenomena and infinite mysteries. It was a longevity Taoism that was enough to shock both ancient and modern times. Buzz, in the distance, there were more six-winged blood mosquitoes rushing over. The reason why these creatures were difficult to deal with was that they were not afraid of death. They formed groups and couldn't be killed, which was very troublesome. Seeing this, Lin Sun put his fingers together again. Unlike before, the might contained within this finger strike was all-powerful and boundlessly powerful, and it was all-powerful and overbearing. Unsurprisingly, all the six-winged blood mosquitoes that rushed over were wiped out. Last time I used the law of fire. This time I used the law of water. Although the momentum is different, there is no obvious difference in power. However, the void-breaking finger of divination is infinite. I've only comprehended a little bit of it. With the improvement of my comprehension in the future, its power should be stronger and stronger. But it consumes too much power. Lin Sun felt helpless. Just 2 fingers consumed 1/3 of his power. Although this Taoism was extremely powerful, its consumption was also amazing. Obviously, it couldn't be used in a long battle. Perhaps only when my cultivation is promoted to a certain level can I operate this Taoism with ease and give full play to its power. Lin Sun pondered. In 3 days, his cultivation was promoted to the middle level of King Tao, and he comprehended a trace of the true meaning of the instant of spring and autumn, which undoubtedly made Lin Sun's combat power a step forward. However, the consumption was also quite amazing. In 3 days, he consumed as many as 5 king medicines just for cultivation. This was the peak king realm, with unparalleled combat power, but the resources needed for cultivation were far more than those of the same generation. However, Lin Sun's Taoism was obviously different from other peak king realms, and the resources needed for cultivation were more than those of the same generation. Fortunately, he had slaughtered the territory of Golden Crow and other major forces before and gained a lot of spoils of war, so he didn't have to worry about it all. 7 days later, Lin Sun made another breakthrough. Chapter 12:14. Mu. In the primitive forest, a vast dragon roar came out of Lin Sun's body, rumbling and spreading. The nearby void suddenly became chaotic and whined, as if it couldn't bear such a breath. The ancient trees exploded one after another, turning into sawdust that scattered everywhere. In the distance, a golden-horned lizard lurking in the lush grass suddenly exploded, and a rain of blood fell. At the same time, Lin Sun opened his eyes. In his body, a vivid dragon was lingering around the Tao seed, swallowing the light of water and fire. 7 days, I finally broke through the Tao of the true dragon to the level of Tao. Lin Sun exhaled a long breath. With a thought in his mind, 9 golden words tribulation emerged and turned into the phantoms of 9 kinds of divine beasts. Ice dragon, Fushi, Bishi, Chaofeng, Yazi, Chionyo, Paleo, and Baxia. Each of the divine beasts was vivid and full of spirituality. They mastered ice beads, armors, cauldrons, seals, bows, zither, and other treasures. Waves of true dragon chi emanated from the bodies of these divine beasts, filling the void. Within a radius of thousands of meters, all the creatures lying dormant were trembling all over at this moment. They were completely deterred and crawled on the ground, shivering. The power of the 9 transformations of the true dragon was obviously completely different from that of other Tao laws. It had more spirituality and momentum. In short, the 9 transformations of the true dragon and the 9 transformations of the true dragon were complementary to each other. Before long, Lin Sun restrained his breath and dispersed the momentum around him, falling into thought. Now, only the star obliteration devouring Wei and the immortality Wei hadn't transformed into Tao laws, but it wouldn't be long before they broke through. Immediately, Lin Sun thought of one thing. The yin and yang lotus is a magical medicine. If I swallow it now, although I can master the Tao of yin and yang, it will waste the efficacy for no reason. He decided that he would only take the medicine when he needed it. Whoosh! Without any delay, Lin Sun stood up and disappeared the next moment. Today was the appointed time with Ji Xingyao. On a low hill, Ji Xingyao's graceful figure stood on top of it, the green grass swaying in the wind. She was dressed in white, and her fine black hair danced in the wind. She looked like a fairy, elegant and refined. Miss Ji, Lin Sun came and greeted him with a smile. When are we leaving? Wait a moment. There's another group of people who will be moving with us. Ji Xingyao said casually. Who? Lin Sun was stunned. The successor of the Saint Hidden Ground's profound Nether Divine Palace. Their leader is an extremely powerful ancient freak called Qi Yunfeng. He was born with the talent of Netherbone Silverblood, and in the ancient times he was already a big shot amongst the top figures. His fighting strength is extremely terrifying. Ji Xingyao explained swiftly. The reason we're working together with them is because they possess an incomplete map related to the Nether Blood Well. Moreover, Qi Yunfeng has a close relationship with the ancient freak of my profound Sikh sword school, Mo Tianhe. So, we don't have to worry about any risks from working together with them. Lin Sun nodded. He had no objection to this. Ji Xingyao and the others were here to search for opportunities, while he was here to save Old Toad. There was no conflict of interest. Of course, if there was a conflict during the action, Lin Sun was not afraid. By the way, I have a treasure that can change your appearance and temperament. In this way, no one will be able to see through your identity. Ji Xingyao said hesitantly. Lin Sun understood her concern. 10 days ago, he had just beaten Mo Tianhe violently. If they acted together, there would inevitably be friction. Don't bother. As Lin Sun said, he ran the formless skill. His appearance and temperament suddenly changed into an ordinary young man with a calm temperament. Ji Xingyao was stunned. She looked Lin Sun up and down and said with a smile, Now, I feel much more pleasing to the eye. Lin Sun said grumpily, I didn't like you before. Ji Xingyao nodded seriously. You used to be like a scoundrel, shameless and awkward. As she said, she couldn't help bursting into laughter. Her beautiful face looked exceptionally bright and brilliant in the sky. Lin Sun rolled his eyes and said, You and I are the same. You used to be like a peacock, with eyes on the top and nostrils in the sky. You were so arrogant. Ji Xingyao widened her eyes and gnashed her teeth in anger. When she was about to say something, Lin Sun said directly, "Stop it. Someone is coming." Suddenly, Ji Xingyao's face froze. She gave a cold snort and then returned to her former beautiful and aloof fairy temperament. "Junior sister Ji, sorry to keep you waiting." In the sky, a group of figures came through the air, led by a young man in a crane cloak. He was Mo Tianhe, the ancient freak of Xianwen Sword House. Ji Xingyao nodded and looked at the man beside Mo Tianhe. "Junior sister Ji, this is Taoism fellow from Chao Yun Peak. As early as the ancient times, we entered the absolute summit domain together. We are very close." Mo Tianhe introduced with a smile. This was a cold-looking man, wearing a wide-sleeved black robe and a star crown. He was dignified and slender, and his skin was as white as jade. He stood there casually, like a noble son of heaven, showing a graceful and reserved temperament. Under the seemingly restrained appearance, there was a kind of extreme conceit. In particular, there were 4 strong people following him, 2 men and 2 women, all of whom were extremely extraordinary, like dragons and phoenixes among men. But at this time, they surrounded him like stars surrounding the moon, which showed his extraordinary origin and foundation. "Greetings, fellow practitioner," Ji Xingyao said. It was also at this time that Chao Yunfeng nodded slightly. He looked at Ji Xingyao with his purple eyes and said, "It's really amazing that there is such a peerless woman as Fairy Ji in this generation. You flatter me." Ji Xingyao was calm and indifferent. This surprised Chao Yunfeng a little, and he couldn't help but look at Ji Xingyao. "Junior sister Ji, who is this friend?" Mo Tianhe looked at Lin Sun and couldn't help frowning after looking at him for a while. "I mentioned him to you before." When Ji Xingyao said this, Lin Sun interrupted with a smile. "My name is Jin Duyi. Greetings, fellow practitioners." Ji Xingyao breathed a sigh of relief. She almost forgot to give Lin Sun a name before. Fortunately, this guy was quick-witted. "Jin Duyi?" Mo Tianhe was suspicious. He thought to himself, when did Ji Xingyao know such a friend? Jin Duyi. Does it mean unique? What an arrogant name. Chao Yunfeng sneered and then looked Lin Sun up and down. Suddenly, he said to Ji Xingyao, "Fairy Ji, you know that we are going to the forbidden land of Styx this time, which is the most dangerous place. If someone drags us down, our whole operation will be affected. In other words, would your friend be able to do it?" Ji Xingyao sneered in her heart. If you knew the identity of this guy, would you still dare to question him like this? Although she thought so, she said, "Don't worry. Fellow practitioner Jean is extremely powerful. He will never affect our operation. There's no proof. This operation is of great importance. If you want a friend to join us, you can let him pass me first." Suddenly, a strong man behind Qi Yunfeng opened his mouth. He was a young man with long and narrow cheeks and cold eyes. He stared at Lin Sun with an aggressive and arrogant look. Chao Yunfeng smiled and did not stop him. Mo Tianhe also chose to look on coldly. He was still suspicious about the origin of Jin Duyi. Moreover, there was a bold idea in his heart that the so-called Jin Duyi was fake, and his real identity was very likely to be Lin Sun. 10 days ago, Lin Sun appeared and talked with Ji Xingyao. There was obviously something wrong with the relationship between them. In addition, Ji Xingyao had never mentioned that she had such a friend since she came to the absolute summit domain, which made Mo Tianhe suspicious. As long as he dares to take action, I can definitely see through his identity. Mo Tianhe thought in his heart. He had been defeated by Lin Sun, so he had long remembered Lin Sun's breath. Once he took action, no matter how well he disguised himself, he would be seen through. Seeing this, Ji Xingyao couldn't help but feel a little angry. Lin Sun was a powerful helper she had invited, but these guys treated him like this. This was not only questioning Lin Sun, but also her decision. However, before she could speak, Lin Sun smiled and said, "You have to pay the price for provoking me. Are you sure you want to do this?" Chow Yun-feng was stunned and then sneered. He didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. The strong man was called Zhang Luxiu. He was also a peerless king. Although he was not an ancient freak, he was a peerless genius from the Xianming immortal mansion. Among his peers, no one dared to talk to him like this. The others also laughed with a playful look on their faces. They thought to themselves, where did Fairy Ji find such an arrogant disciple? Not only his name, but also his behavior was very arrogant, which made people laugh. Only Mo Tianhe became more and more suspicious. His heart was pounding. His tone was obviously the same as Demon Godlin's style. They were both so unscrupulous and bold. Was it really him? Mo Tianhe's eyes flickered. Zhang Luxiu also smiled, but his smile was very cold. He couldn't help but look at Chow Yun-feng. Chow Yun-feng nodded and said, "Don't go too far. After all, he is Fairy Ji's friend. Don't be cruel." Zhang Luxiu was immediately relieved. He fixed his sharp eyes on Lin Sun and said, "As long as you can block 10 moves from me, you pass." None of them noticed that although Ji Xingyao looked calm at the moment, there was a trace of imperceptible pity and helplessness in her eyes. Why bother to be abused? She thought to herself, no need for 10 moves. 1 blow is enough. Lin Sun still smiled, but there was a touch of coldness in his black eyes. He knew that if he didn't frighten Zhang Luxiu, he would definitely not be treated well in the next action. Arrogant. Zhang Luxiu sneered, exuding a frightening power of the king realm. Arrogant? Wrong. That's because you know nothing about power. At this time, Lin Sun had already attacked. He stepped forward and simply pressed his finger. Chapter 12:15. Mu. At the moment when Lin Sun attacked, everyone had a feeling that it was not a person, but a dormant dragon coming out of the abyss at this moment. As Lin Sun pressed his finger, Zhang Luxiu felt it most strongly, as if he was in the spring and autumn of eternity. His body and mind were impacted by a vast momentum. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he felt a stinging pain in his eyes, as if he was not facing a simple finger, but the momentum of eternity. He let out an angry roar. The battle strength around his body surged as he circulated his strength to the limit to block. However, the feeling it gave off was like a praying mantis, fearlessly resisting the wheel of an eternal spring and autumn. It seemed extremely small. Bang! Zhang Luxiu was directly shaken out, and his body was out of control like a kite with a broken string. It took a long time to describe, but in fact it happened in an instant. Although Yun-feng noticed that something was wrong, it was too late to stop it. Boom! Thousands of meters away, a hill was smashed by Zhang Luxiu's body. Gravel flew everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air. Everyone was stunned, and the scene was strangely silent. Zhang Luxiu, the peerless genius of Xianming Palace, had stepped into the king realm not long ago. But now, he was directly defeated by Lin Sun's finger. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Ahem! In the distance, Zhang Luxiu climbed up from the ground with a dirty face. His hair was disheveled, and he was coughing up blood. Qi Yun-feng and the others felt uncomfortable when they saw this, and their hearts were in turmoil. This Jin Duyi, could it be that he's really an expert that's concealing his strength? Come again! Zhang Luxiu shouted and rushed at Lin Sun with a murderous look. His cheeks were livid, and he was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He thought he was careless. Can't afford to lose? Lin Sun asked. As he spoke, his figure flashed, and he had already rushed up. Stop! Xi Yunfeng had no time to think, and shouted to stop Lin Sun. But it was too late. With a bang, Zhang Luxiu was hit again, and he was still suppressed by Lin Sun's finger. Boom! On the ground, a man-shaped pit was smashed by Zhang Luxiu. Smoke and dust billowed, and the ground was shaking as if there was an earthquake. Even Ji Xingyao couldn't bear to watch. At this moment, Lin Sun had returned to his original place. He looked calm and composed, as if it wasn't him who attacked just now. However, when they looked at him again, the gazes of Qi Yun-feng and the others had changed. There was a trace of anger, bewilderment, and fear. At this point, anyone could discern that Jean D's combat strength was formidable, and he was entirely capable of crushing Jean Lucio. Mo Tienna's face was cloudy and uncertain. Just now, he had been staring at Lin Sun closely, but he was surprised to find that the guy in front of him was more powerful and abnormal than the demon Lin he knew. Furthermore, the aura he used in battle was completely different from Fiend Celestial Lin's. The battle Dao Dharma he used was completely different. Could it be that he really isn't Demon God Lin? But since he's so powerful, he shouldn't be a nobody. Mo Tianhe couldn't figure it out. Again, in the distance, Jean Lucio was like an enraged madman, rushing over again. Enough! Qi Yunfeng's face darkened, and he scolded, which made Jean Lucio's face turn pale. Finally, he stopped. Then, Qi Yunfeng looked at Lin Sun, and his tone became polite. If I'm not mistaken, the power of the great way you displayed should be related to the bloodline of the true dragon, right? Lin Sun was stunned and said yes. Hearing this, the others showed a look of enlightenment, and they looked at Lin Sun with more and more different eyes. Related to the bloodline of the true dragon? This was not simple at all. The bloodline of the true dragon? Mo Tianhe felt completely confused. Only Ji Xingyao, who knew Lin Sun's identity, almost couldn't help laughing. If Demon God Lin came from the bloodline of the true dragon, which big force dared to bully him in the ancient desolation realm? Haha, it's undoubtedly a blessing for us to have such a master like Brother Jean join us in this action. Qi Yunfeng laughed and looked very enthusiastic. He changed his attitude towards Lin Sun. We didn't recognize you just now. Please forgive us, Brother Jean. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, You're too polite. He was a little vigilant in his heart. In his opinion, Qi Yunfeng was not simple. He was able to rise and fall at the right time. If he became an enemy, he would definitely be a formidable opponent. No time to lose. Let's go. Ji Xingyao said. Yes, we must hurry up. As far as I know, there are other forces planning to go to the forbidden land of Styx this time. Qi Yunfeng looked serious. We don't need to pay attention to ordinary forces, but there are two forces that we should pay attention to. Who? Mo Tianhe couldn't help asking. One is the Wutian sect, and the other is the bloodline of the Golden Crow. Qi Yunfeng said. Hearing the three words, Wutian sect, all the people present were shocked. It was a big sect in the Saint Hermit land with an unimaginably terrifying foundation. Many people couldn't help laughing when they heard the name of the Golden Crow. When the Golden Crow was in the distant Fire Realm, its seventh prince, Wu Lingfei, was killed by Demon God Lin. Not long ago, the Flying Star Mountain, where they lived, was massacred by Demon God Lin. Their strength has been greatly weakened. How dare they covet the opportunities in the forbidden land of Styx? Aren't they courting death? Mo Tianhe sneered. Qi Yunfeng shook his head and reminded, Don't underestimate the strength of the Golden Crow. In ancient times, no one dared to provoke the Sunset Tang Valley where the Golden Crow lived. Even the sages didn't dare to provoke them easily. At present, they are indeed badly hurt by Demon God Lin, but it's not a serious injury. As far as I know, Wu Lingdao, the 13th prince of the Golden Crow, who is practicing in the Kanshui realm, has come to the distant Fire realm after learning of the encounter of Wu Lingfei and Wu Lingfeng. He swore to kill Demon God Lin. Hearing this, an imperceptible coldness flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. When he was in the distant Fire realm, he had heard that there were three powerful figures of the Golden Crow who entered the Absolute Land this time. They were the 7th Prince Wu Lingfei, the 9th Prince Wu Lingfeng, and the 13th Prince Wu Lingdao. This Wu Lingdao is a ruthless character. Don't look down on his low ranking. His combat ability is the best amongst his brothers, and he is regarded as the little king of war of the Golden Crow clan. In ancient times, he had entered the Apex domain, and the number of people who died at his hands was not small. Qi Yunfeng's eyebrows flashed with a trace of seriousness. Obviously, he also had a trace of fear for Wu Lingdao. Now, he has become a top figure. If he participates in the action of entering the forbidden land of Styx, we must not be careless. Hearing this, Everyone couldn't help but be awestruck. While talking, they had already started to move and flew towards the forbidden land of Styx. Along the way, there was no disturbance. Until they entered the primitive forest, they slowed down and became careful. This was already the periphery of the forbidden land of Styx. However, Linsun clearly felt that, different from a few days ago, the strange aura permeating the primitive forest was obviously much less. It was even impossible to detect its existence without careful perception. Buzzing before long, a group of six-winged blood mosquitoes rushed out, which shocked everyone. Be careful, everyone. These things are extremely vicious and not afraid of death. Go in groups and don't get entangled with them. Qi and Feng took a deep breath and reminded everyone. However, to their astonishment, these six-winged blood mosquitoes seemed to be frightened after rushing out. Before they got close, they turned around and fled, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Fled? Even Qi and Feng was a little dizzy. Maybe they are frightened by us. After all, the strength of our group is enough to run amok in the distant fire realm. Mo, Tiana said proudly. Only Lin Sun smiled and said nothing. He wouldn't say that these six-winged blood mosquitoes were not stupid without intelligence. They were indeed fearless, but they were also frightened by the killing. In the past 10 days, no less than thousands of six-winged blood mosquitoes died in his hands. So as soon as he appeared, these fierce creatures would flee in panic. Is it your doing? Ji Xingyao asked Lin Sun doubtfully. Lin Sun remained calm and said, I think what your senior brother Mo said is right. Ji Xingyao rolled her eyes at him. Do you think I will believe it? Lin Sun said with a smile, Well, I admit that they are afraid of me. I don't believe you. Ji Xingyao sneered with a look of don't brag. Lin Sun was speechless for a while. Women were really inexplicable. Whether it was true or false, they didn't believe anything but their own judgment. On the way, the atmosphere gradually became gloomy. Here, ancient trees covered the sky. It was dark and damp, and there were many fierce creatures and poisonous insects rarely seen in the outside world, which was extremely creepy. No one dared to take it lightly. But the strange thing was that all along the way, they actually encountered no danger, and they didn't encounter any battle or obstruction at all. Even if they encountered some terrible fierce creatures, they would turn around and flee as soon as they appeared, as if they were stimulated and frightened, wishing their parents had given them 2 more legs. Just like earlier, a 300 long azure scale python that was thick like a bucket and possessed an extremely terrifying aura caused Qi Yunfeng and the others to seem as if they were facing a great enemy, and their bodies tensed up as they prepared to fight a fierce battle. Who would have thought that as soon as the python appeared, it would let out an anguished wail and flee so quickly that it crashed into countless ancient trees. This caused Si Yunfeng and the others to be stunned speechless. Why do I feel that the python seems to be afraid of you? Ji Xingyao couldn't help asking again. A few days ago, I caught it, chopped a piece of its meat, and cooked a pot of snake soup, but the taste was too bad. There was a fishy smell that couldn't be removed. Lin Sun said casually. Bragging again. Ji Xingyao glared at him. Lin Sun was helpless. He swore to God that he absolutely didn't lie, but Ji Xingyao didn't believe him. Who could he blame? Be careful, everyone. The forbidden land of Styx is in front of us. That place is extremely strange and ominous. You must not take it lightly. Si Yunfeng reminded in front of them. Lin Sun looked up and saw a bloody world at the end of the primitive mountain forest, which was dazzling. P.S. The interactive activity last night was extremely popular. Thank you for your active participation. As for the prizes, because it was the weekend, the staff of Zhonghen would count them after work next week, and then distribute them to everyone. Chapter 12:16. The Forbidden Land of Styx was a frightening name. However, no one could say for sure just how terrifying this place was. It was not only because this place was extremely vast and hid too many strange and ominous dangers, but also because most of the strong who entered this place never came back. At this time, what appeared in front of Lin Sun and the others was a bloody world. As far as the eye could see, the earth seemed to be soaked in the blood of demons, glowing with dazzling bloody light. In the void, the bloody wind whistled like a mist covering the sky and the sun. Vaguely, it could be seen that there were mountains rising and falling in the bloody mist, like behemoths dormant in the bloody world, waiting to devour people. The most amazing thing was that there were 9 bloody suns in the sky. The bloody suns were not dazzling. They were distributed in different areas of the sky, rotating slowly as if they were dyed red by endless blood, which was shocking. With just a glance, Lin Sun felt an unspeakable fierce and gloomy atmosphere coming to his face, which made him feel depressed both physically and mentally. His black eyes suddenly narrowed slightly, and his heart was in awe. Seeing Si Yunfeng, Mo Tianhe, and others, their faces also changed slightly, and they became alert as if they were facing a formidable enemy. From now on, we are bound to encounter unexpected, strange, and ominous things on the way. You must not be careless. Si Yunfeng took a deep breath and exhorted everyone. I'll lead the way. Ji Xingyao stepped forward, and the aura around her suddenly flowed. Buzz! Above her head, a broken hand bone appeared, which was as white as jade and emitted circles of obscure and enchanting white light. Whoosh! The hand bone seemed to come to life. As its knuckles pointed in the void, a white light suddenly rushed out of the void and extended to the distance. It was like a path. Then, everyone followed Ji Xingyao and went to the distance. This is a piece of remnant bone of a saint, which was refined into divine light guide by the ancestors of Xianwen's sword house. With it, you can seek luck and avoid misfortune. Last time I entered the divine hell blood well, I relied on this treasure to guide me. On the way, Ji Xingyao transmitted her voice to Lin Sun. Without the guidance of such a treasure, anyone who enters the forbidden land of Styx will get lost in it. Lin Sun nodded, indicating that he understood. Bloody mist suffused the surroundings all along the way, causing the heavens and the earth to be filled with a terrifying, fiendish, and vicious aura. Gales whistled in the surroundings like the wailing of fiend gods, and it caused one's hairs to stand on end. Along the way, whether it was Lin Sun or others, they had to use all their strength to offset the omnipresent oppressive breath. Crack! Not long after, a cracking sound came from under Mo Tianhe's feet, which was especially ear-piercing in this silent atmosphere. Everyone jumped in fright and looked over. There was a blood-red skull on the ground, but it had already been crushed. Its empty eye sockets looked up at the sky, and its mouth was split open as if it was laughing at them. What bad luck! Mo Tianhe's face darkened. He kicked the skull away with a bang. Who would have thought that this broken skull would suddenly transform in midair and transform into a bloody skeleton crow? And it let out a sharp cackle. That voice was extremely ear-piercing, and it tore through the silence of the world. This strange scene caused everyone to be shocked. Oh, this ghost crow seems to be calling for something. A cold light flashed in Qi Yunfeng's eyes. A black flying sword suddenly flew out of his palm and flew across the sky like a waterfall. Bang! The bloody skeleton crow's body exploded and turned into wisps of blood mist. Obviously, it was not a real living thing. Let's go. Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly shrank as he sensed that something was wrong. He grabbed Ji Xingyao's arm and rushed forward. Qi Yunfeng and others were stunned at first, and then their faces suddenly changed. They followed closely. Rumble. Just as they left, the ground where they were originally at cracked open, and bloody skeletons rushed out. Their bodies were all in tatters. But the strange thing was that their bones were constantly reassembling, and blood was gurgling on their bodies. In their empty eye sockets, a pair of bloody flames were burning, which was extremely horrifying. As far as the eye could see, tens of thousands of bloody holes broke out of the ground, submerging the area like a ghost town. Lin Sun and others gasped. If they hadn't escaped in time, they would have been drowned in the army of bloody skeletons. Clatter, a bloody skeleton shaped like an ancient fierce beast, Qiangqi, shook its body and grew to a height of tens of thousands of meters. It stretched out its thick white bone arm and slapped Lin Sun and others fiercely. In an instant, the void collapsed, An endless evil spirit rushed out with this blow, which was much more terrifying than the attack of a king of extinction realm expert. Go! Without hesitation, Lin Sun and others rushed forward again. Boom! Behind them, the earth cracked, and a bottomless ravine was abruptly formed by the blow. At the same time, bloody skeletons rushed out like a tide and spread to Lin Sun and others at an extremely fast speed. Suddenly, one of the women following behind Chai Yinfeng screamed. But was bitten by a bloody skull. She was also a king of extinction realm expert, but she couldn't avoid this blow. Immediately, many people's faces changed. What on earth were these skeletons? How could they be so strange? Bang! Lin Sun was extremely decisive. He suddenly stepped forward and smashed the skull with a slap. The woman let out another scream and jumped up like a frightened rabbit. Her pretty face was full of shame and annoyance, and she glared at Lin Sun fiercely. It turned out that when Lin Sun smashed the skull, his palm also fell on her, but which was burning hot. You? The woman gritted her teeth. Lin Sun didn't care about this. There was a strand of strange bloody light wrapped around his fingertip. It was extremely vicious and strange. It tore his skin and drilled into his body. He couldn't get rid of it. This is the blood god, an extremely terrible and strange power. It can pollute people's chi and blood and corrupt people's divine soul. King realm experts will suffer calamity if they're tainted by it. Ji Xingyao's heart tightened, and a touch of worry appeared on her pretty face. The others were also shocked. Even the woman who was originally ashamed and angry stopped screaming at this moment. Let's get out of here first. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was extremely calm. While urging his strength to resist the blood god, he rushed forward. Rumble! Behind him, the skeleton army was hot on his heels, covering the sky and covering the earth. In this blood-red world, it was exceptionally terrifying. It was not until a quarter of an hour later that all this gradually disappeared. What appeared in front of Lin Sun and the others was a huge river filled with bloody mist. The river had long dried up, but it was filled with bloody mist. It was so vast that they couldn't see where the other side was. Buzz, at the same time, the deity guide above Ji Xingyao's head was buzzing and spinning, and she couldn't tell the direction anymore. Ji Xingyao looked around, and her heart sank. She said, "We just ran for our lives and went in the wrong direction. Now, maybe we're lost." The others' faces also became gloomy. They had just entered the forbidden land of sticks for less than 2 hours, and such an accident happened, which made them all feel a little bad. "How are you?" Ji Xingyao looked at Lin Sun with a touch of worry on her face. The others also looked at Lin Sun. At this time, Lin Sun's face was a little pale. In his body, a strand of blood god was running around. Wherever it passed, the breath it released was corroding his chi and blood little by little. No matter how he used the devouring star way, he couldn't resolve it. "Sorry, if it weren't for me just now." The woman who had been bitten on the hip felt a little guilty. Although she was injured, the blood god didn't invade her body. Instead, Lin Sun, who had saved her, was affected. "Don't feel guilty, missing Shui. It's not your fault." Lin Sun took a deep breath and said, "Can you wait for a moment and let me meditate?" The others naturally agreed. Now that they were all lost, all actions were in vain before they were sure of the direction. Without hesitation, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground. The others were discussing whether or not they should cross the dried-up riverbed covered in blood mist. According to Ji Xingyao, the blood god was an extremely strange and ominous power that had something to do with the legendary river Styx. Ordinary king realm strongmen couldn't resolve it, and their souls would be corroded and turned into a rotten, bloody corpse. It could be imagined how vicious and terrible this power was. Lin Sun tried to resolve it with his own power, but it didn't work at all. Even his spiritual awareness couldn't lock the trace of the blood god. Seeing that half of his chi and blood had been corroded, even Lin Sun couldn't help but feel anxious. What should he do? He had tried many methods, but none of them worked. Tut! Later, Lin Sun was forced to run the power of the Dharma scripture and display the Ksitigarbha salvation mantra. The Tao seed in his body glowed and produced a grand Buddhist chant. At the same time, the pure and magnificent black Buddha light flowed and condensed into a black lotus seat. This lotus seat was called Guide, which was derived from the core mystery of the Ksitigarbha salvation mantra. It could guide ghosts and gods and suppress evil spirits. Originally, this method was one of the supreme mysteries of the earthly scripture temple. But after the holy monk Duji's interpretation, it had more mysterious power. On the black lotus seat, there was a wisp of black phoenix divine flame. The reason why Lin Sun used this method was that he was forced to use it as a last resort. Unexpectedly, as soon as this method was used, an incredible scene appeared. The wisp of blood god suddenly stopped moving, and then it was drawn into the black lotus platform, as if it was being pulled. Boom! With bursts of Buddhist chant, the blood god suddenly burned in the Buddha light and let out a shrill scream. It could be clearly seen that wisps of blood mist were incinerated and wiped out. Finally, only a fingernail-sized shadow fell on the black lotus seat. Thank you for awakening me from the endless oblivion. Now I can be free. A relieved voice sounded with a kind of gratitude. Immediately, the wisp of shadow disappeared. Chapter 12:17. Source of Natal Soul. In an instant, Lin Sun recognized that the crystal-clear power was an incomparably pure spiritual power. As far as Lin Sun knew, only after the death of a saint, his primordial spirit would be preserved as the purest energy, which would never be extinguished. It was like the Buddha Sarira after the death of the Buddha. This kind of power was also called Source of Natal Soul, which belonged to the category of holy objects. It was extremely rare and invaluable. Refining it was enough to make a practitioner's spiritual power have an amazing improvement, and there was no need to worry about any drawbacks at all. Especially for the strong in the king realm, the soul was like a lamp. The stronger the soul, the brighter it was, the more beneficial it was for the exploration of longevity. I didn't expect that the blood god was born from the source of natal soul after the death of a saint. Lin Sun was shocked. Everything that had happened before was truly too dangerous. If he hadn't run the Ksitigarbha salvation mantra in time, it was very likely that his blood, chi, and soul would have been corroded by the blood god. After this incident, Lin Sun was completely sure that the Buddhist power inherited from the Ksitigarbha temple had a natural restraining effect on the strange power contained in the blood god. Clatter, as Lin Sun's mind moved, the source of natal soul was suddenly refined and converged into his soul like a stream of water. Suddenly, Lin Sun only felt that his spirit was refreshed as if he was bathing in the holy rain spring. His spiritual cultivation actually improved a lot in just a few breaths. There was a faint sign of a breakthrough. Now, his spiritual cultivation was at the level of seeing the world, one of the three realms of divine flower gathering in one's head. The next realm was seeing the future. If he broke through, he could have a premonition and comprehend a trace of karma and luck in the dark. He could even see the good or bad luck on the road of cultivation in the future. Originally, Lin Sun estimated that it would take at least more than 3 years to break through the level of his spiritual cultivation. That was because the power of one's spirit was extremely mysterious. It was extremely difficult to increase one's spirit. For example, Lin Sun had practiced meditating magic. As early as the beginning of cultivation, his spiritual power was much stronger than that of the strong in the same realm. But until now, his spiritual power was still at the level of divine flower gathering in one's head. Even so, it was far beyond that of his peers. It could be imagined from this how difficult it was to cultivate the soul. Yet now, merely refining and absorbing a strand of the soul source left behind by a saint had caused the strength of his soul to improve greatly, and this sort of improvement could be said to be world-shocking. Fairy G, this fellow Taoist Jean, seems to possess the inheritance of the great Earth Treasury Temple. When Lin Sun was cultivating, his whole body was covered with Buddha's light, and he looked solemn. There was a faint sound of chanting, which immediately attracted the attention of Qi Yunfeng and others. Ji Xingyao replied vaguely, She was also very shocked by this and naturally couldn't give an explanation. He has the power related to the bloodline of the true dragon, and now he is involved with the great Earth Treasury Temple. This guy, where did this monster come from? Mo Tianhe felt dizzy. Before, he had always suspected that this Jin Di was Lin Sun, but now he also felt confused and uncertain. I heard that an ancient freak called Ancient Buddha came out of the great Earth Treasury Temple. His origin is mysterious, and his combat power is also unfathomable. So far, no one has seen his true face. If Fairy Ji didn't know fellow Taoist Jean, I would almost suspect that he is the legendary ancient Buddha. Qi Yunfeng's eyes flickered. Until now, he still couldn't figure out Lin Sun's background, which made him more and more afraid to underestimate Lin Sun. Fellow Taoist Jean is chivalrous and righteous. No matter where he comes from, he will definitely not harm us. Yin Shui bit her cherry lips and said in a low voice. Everyone's expression became a little strange. They knew that Lin Sun had saved Yin Shui once before, which made her feel grateful. At this moment, Lin Sun stood up, swept away his previous sleepiness, and became energetic. Everyone's eyes lit up. They were keenly aware that under Lin Sun's seemingly ordinary appearance, there was a kind of ethereal temperament. Moreover, in the face of his deep and calm eyes, everyone felt a kind of invisible pressure. This made them all realize that after Lin Sun solved the blood god this time, it was very likely to be a blessing in disguise and get some benefits. Even Qi Yinfeng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This was an unexpected opportunity that couldn't be forced. The current area is full of extremely strange power. We can't judge the direction, so we plan to cross this river. Do you think it's feasible? Ji Xingyao asked. Lin Sun's black eyes swept the distance and saw the bloody mist rolling and filling the river. He couldn't see the other side of the river. The unknown was the most dangerous. The bloody mist river in front of them seemed calm, but who knew how many dangers were hidden in it? But there was no turning back, because behind them, there was an endless army of skeletons. Then let's go. Lin Sun nodded. Qi Yunfeng immediately withdrew a golden treasured vessel, and it carried everyone as it slowly sailed into the sky above the river that was suffused with blood mist. Suddenly, everyone noticed that entering the sky above the river was like coming to a sea of bloody clouds. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but bloody mist. Even the 9 bloody suns in the sky were gone. Clatter, the treasure boat moved forward in the bloody mist, looking very small, like a lonely boat in the ocean at night. What made everyone more solemn was that the rolling bloody mist filled the sky and the earth. It was very easy to get lost in it. Lin Sun released his spiritual awareness, but was surprised to find that the power of the bloody mist was so strange that it could greatly hinder the detection of spiritual awareness. At most, he could only sense an area of 3,000 meters. In addition, it was quiet all the way. Only the sound of airflow fluctuations when the treasure boat passed through the bloody mist could be heard. Not long after, the treasure boat suddenly stopped. Ji Xingyao was about to speak, but Lin Sun covered her mouth and looked into the distance like lightning. Almost at the same time, Qi Yinfeng and others also opened their eyes wide in horror. In the bloody mist ahead, broken corpses appeared, each of which emitted a bloody light, which was ferocious and terrible. Some of them had their heads broken, some had their stomachs cut open, and some had lost their limbs. If one looked carefully, there were humans and creatures of other clans. But without exception, all of them were covered in blood, and their eyes were empty and lifeless. Obviously, only corpses remained. Some carried broken flags, some drove ancient broken chariots, and they converged into a formidable army that charged into the depths of the bloody mist without looking back. Inexplicably, everyone felt a wave of shock in their hearts, and then they felt a wave of sorrow while their chests seemed to be blocked. They died countless years ago and only left behind broken corpses, but they still transformed into a formidable army that charged forward. Exactly how great were their lingering thoughts that made them unwilling to be silent and peaceful even after death? Who were their opponents? Lin Sun and the others held their breaths in concentration as they watched silently, and their expressions changed indeterminately. What they saw in front of them was too strange and shocking, and it caused them to suspect that this was once an ancient battlefield, and a world-shocking war had erupted here an unknown time ago. It didn't take long for this strange army to disappear in the bloody mist. But before Lin Sun and the others could continue to move forward, a deafening sound of fighting rang out, and then a wave of terrifying power surged in the bloody mist. The killing intent and power fluctuations made Lin Sun and the others tremble in their hearts. Almost unanimously, they chose to drive the treasure ship to rush to the distance with all their strength. Rumble, in the depths of the bloody mist, the fierce battle raged like thunder and wind, resounding in all directions, accompanied by the roar of gods and demons, which made people shudder with fear and feel extremely depressed. There must have been a great divine battle here. Until they escaped from this area, Qi Yunfeng spoke in a deep voice, and his expression was extremely solemn. Others nodded, because what they saw just now made them feel a fatal threat, and they didn't dare to imagine how miserable their fate would be if they were involved in such a battle. Those corpses were definitely all great figures who could rule the world when they were alive. However, for some unknown reason, they all died here. Moreover, this is merely a region within the Styx Forbidden area. I really do not dare to imagine just how many secrets are hidden within this absolute region. Mo Tianhe sighed with emotion. Others were also quite touched. The absolute domain was divided into 3,000 realms and the upper 9 realms. It was boundless and only appeared several times in ancient times. As for its origin, no one could say anything about it, not to mention how many secrets it was hiding. Now, all of them had the power of the Peerless King realm, and they could be regarded as giants in the outside world. But when they arrived at such a fierce place, they still felt incomparably small and pale. They continued to move forward, and the deafening sound of fighting gradually disappeared. However, when they had just recovered from the shock, another strange thing happened. In the bloody mist in the distance, there was a small hill made of skeletons, and the gurgling blood and bloody mist flowed from the dense skeletons. On the top of the hill, a graceful figure was sitting there, wearing a blood-stained dress. She was combing her long hair with her hands as if she was dressing up in front of the river. However, what caused everyone's hearts to turn cold was the fact that there was nothing above her neck. There was no head. Then, everyone noticed that the headless figure in a bloody robe turned around and seemed to see them. Suddenly, they were all stiff, their scalps were numb, and their souls swayed as if they were about to fly out of their bodies. Tut! Lin Sun suddenly made a Zen sound with Pu Lao's roar. Suddenly, the Buddha's light spread, and a solemn and grand momentum filled the air. Everyone suddenly sobered up. When they looked back again, the headless figure in a bloody robe had turned around and was still combing her long hair gently. It was like a woman dressing up in front of the mirror and feeling sorry for herself. But it happened on the mountain of bones overflowing with blood, coupled with the headless figure. It gave people a kind of indescribable horror. At the same time, a faint and indistinct sigh resounded, and it revealed boundless loneliness. Chapter 12:18. A soft sigh that was like a whisper lingered in the hearts of everyone, causing their moods to sink. It was as if there was a fishbone stuck in their throats, causing them to hesitate to speak. Who was it? When he raised his head, he found a hill of white bones, and the headless figure in a blood-red robe had already disappeared. They are all gone. Who will remember me? Inexplicably, Lin Sun recalled what the wisp of wool left by Chun Linkong, the burning immortal, had said in the Fenchin Valley. When we left the ancient desolation realm, we were worried that it would be dangerous and there might be accidents. So, we left our mantle and fortune here in order to pass on the torch. Even if we died in a foreign land, our inheritance would not be cut off. These were the original words of Chun Linkong. Now, hearing the words of the woman who called herself Wu Yang, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a thought. Did they refer to the group of experts who left the ancient desolation realm with Chun Linkong? Wu Yang, According to the records of our Xianming Palace, there was a brilliant war Emperor Wu Yang in the beginning of antiquity times. He fought in the 9 heavens and the 9 serenities. He dominated the world alone for a period of time. All his peers were overshadowed by him. Suddenly, Qi Yunfeng cried out involuntarily and spoke of an ancient secret. War Emperor Wu Yang. Everyone was shocked. Could it be that the headless woman in a blood-red robe was a war emperor in antiquity times? Those who could be called war emperors were all supreme figures who could dominate an era. A woman who could surpass her peers and dominate the world for a period of time was like a legend, which was enough to shock everyone. But why did she appear here? And her head is missing? Tiana gasped. Everyone was shocked. That's right. How could a battle emperor lose his head? No one knew. But after this incident, everyone became more aware of the strangeness and ominous nature of the forbidden land of Styx. The secret of its existence was just the tip of the iceberg, but it was already shocking. The treasure ship continued to move forward. Like a mystery that had been shrouded in the ancient times, the treasure ship was full of unknowns. No one noticed that a beautiful figure was sitting at the stern of the ship. She wore a dress that was tainted with blood, and she was faintly discernible within the blood-red mist, causing her to seem illusory. Lin Sun seemed to notice something and couldn't help looking back. However, he did not discover anything. The figure was clearly there, but in his field of vision, there was nothing. When they reached the other side, nothing unusual happened along the way. The bloody mist dispersed to reveal the sky and the 9 blood suns that hung above it once more, and everyone simultaneously heaved sighs of relief. In the distance, a group of mountains lay dormant on the ground, their peaks rising and falling. Without the slightest hesitation, all of them ascended the bank, and they were only too eager to leave this place that was filled with blood mist and mysteries as soon as possible. Before leaving, a faint sigh seemed to ring in Lin's ears. Lin suddenly turned around. The blood fog filled the air. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he had a strong feeling that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from the depths of the blood fog. However, if one tried to sense it carefully, they would only see the endlessly roiling blood mist. What happened? Ji Xingyao looked back at Lin Sun with some doubts. I'm fine. Lin Sun shook his head and followed the others. But soon, he felt a thump in his heart because an old and dull copper ring was hanging on the hair near his ear. It was only the size of a copper coin, simple and unadorned. Lin Sun's back was drenched in cold sweat. The copper ring had been tied to the tip of his hair, but he had never noticed it. Who did this? If the person wanted to, couldn't he be killed silently? Lin Sun secretly glanced at Ji Xingyao and Si Yunfeng, only to find that they didn't notice it at all. Was it her? Inexplicably, Lin Sun thought of the figure in a blood-stained dress sitting on the mountain of white bones. Lin Sun held the copper ring in his hand and sensed it, but he only felt a bone-chilling coldness. Apart from that, he found nothing else. Before long, the divine light guide in Ji Xingyao's hand finally returned to normal, showing a new path. This made everyone feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. In the forbidden land of Styx, the most worrying thing was to get lost. Taoist C, sorry to disturb you. Can you tell me about the battle emperor Wu Yang? Lin Sun stepped forward and asked. This startled the others, and they couldn't help but look at Si Yunfeng. They were also curious why a battle emperor, who had once been amazing for a period of time, would appear in that strange blood mist without a head. But to everyone's disappointment, Si Yunfeng knew very little. He only knew the name of Battle Emperor Wu Yang, but didn't know anything about his deeds or origins. But one thing is certain. Anyone who is worshipped as a battle emperor must have opened up a path of his own. Qi Yunfeng's gaze carried a wisp of reverence and admiration. Since the ancient times until now, there have been numerous paths towards the Tao that have been passed down in the world. If we trace their origins, then all of these paths towards the Tao were established by the great wisdom and willpower of our predecessors. Some paths of cultivation have been annihilated in the passage of time. Some paths of cultivation have survived to this day. For example, the Xianming Palace where we are and the Xianwen Sword House where Fairy Ji and the others are, both have a legacy. This legacy is the path opened up by the ancestors of our sect. It can be said to be a blessing for all generations, so that we can benefit from it when we first set foot on the road of cultivation. We don't have to worry about going astray. Everyone deeply agreed. Lin Sun's expression was a little strange. He was shocked and proud, because his path of cultivation was also opened up by himself. It was unprecedented and not inferior to those of the sages of ancient times. What he lacked was nothing more than further exploration. If he could become a sage one day, he could completely establish his own orthodoxy, teach and impart knowledge to all living beings, and be respected by all ages. He didn't want to follow the old path of his ancestors. This old path was opened up by a supreme figure like Battle Emperor Wu Yang. To the cultivators of the later generations, this was an extremely precious inheritance, but it was also a form of restriction. In Lin Sun's view, the experience and legacy of the ancestors could be used for reference and learning, but if he really wanted to create unprecedented achievements on the road of cultivation, he must set foot on his own path. All learning and reference were not for imitation. It was to draw inferences about other cases from one case, draw inferences about other cases by analogy, exhaust the wisdom of the ancients, and make use of it to create his own path of cultivation. Only then could he have the opportunity to surpass the ancients. Those who learn from me will live, and those who imitate me will die. The group moved forward under the leadership of Ji Xingyao. They encountered several dangers along the way, but they were all resolved without mishap. Why do I feel that since we crossed the long river of blood mist, the dangers we encountered along the way have been much smaller, and there has even been no fatal disaster? After a few hours, Tina said in a daze. The others thought for a moment and nodded secretly. Isn't this a good thing? If there is a fatal disaster, it will be a disaster rather than a blessing. We can only say that we are lucky. Ji Yinfeng laughed. Lin Sun rubbed the old copper ring on his finger thoughtfully. Was it really good luck? It's in front of us. Suddenly, Ji Xingyao, who was leading the way, said with a trace of joy. Everyone looked up and saw two majestic mountains standing in the distance. They were bare, like a pair of gates guarding the heaven and the earth. In the center, there was a canyon, which was filled with blood mist, and the scene inside could not be seen clearly. Last time, I found a god's blood well in this canyon, and the old toad you mentioned was trapped in it. Ji Xingyao transmitted her voice to Lin Sun. Lin Sun was shocked and nodded to show that he understood. Without delay, everyone stepped forward with a trace of expectation on their faces. The god's blood well, a place with heaven-defying good fortune, had been sealed for thousands of years. In ancient times, there were also strong people who came here. But without exception, all of them returned in frustration. The reason was that the good fortune here was sealed and could not be broken at all. But this time was different. This was an unprecedented great world, and the good fortune that had been sealed in the past would appear in this great world. The blood mist was heavy. Although they were excited, they were extremely vigilant, because the more heaven-defying the good fortune was, the more terrifying the danger would be. All of them were top experts who had experienced hundreds of battles, so they naturally knew that if one wanted to seek good fortune, one must bear the weight of it. Before long, a dry well appeared in their field of vision. This well covered an area of about 3 m, and the stone wall beside the well was mottled with blood and emitted a horrifying, ghastly, and strange aura. At this moment, Qi Yunfeng opened an old scroll, looked at it for a moment, and then said with a smile, "Yes, this is the entrance to the bloody hell." Swoosh! A black figure suddenly flashed out from the nearby blood mist like a bolt of lightning, and before everyone could react, it rushed into the dry well and disappeared. Damn it! Everyone was shocked, and their faces instantly became gloomy. Obviously, someone had entered the god's blood well before they did. The terrifying thing was that they hadn't been able to lock onto that person's aura from beginning to end. Who was that person? Only Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a trace of a strange expression. He kept having the feeling that the black figure from before was slightly familiar, And then he recalled that it was precisely the blackbird that liked to take the blame. That fellow actually came as well. There's no time to lose. Let's act quickly. Chi and Feng took a deep breath and took the lead to move forward. After he sized it up briefly, he first withdrew a jade cauldron that emanated a violet glow, and it formed a defensive barrier around his body before he leaped into the god's blood well. Obviously, he was worried that there would be an ambush beneath the well, so he'd taken precautions in advance. The others followed closely behind him when they saw this. Lin Sun walked at the back. At the instant his figure leaped into the dry well, his fingers suddenly trembled slightly. It was that old and simple copper ring. However, when Lin Sun sensed it carefully, the copper ring was still the same as before. It didn't react at all, and there was nothing unusual about it. But the more it was like this, the more Lin Sun felt that there was definitely something strange about this ring. Quickly, it's here. Not long after Lin Sun and the others left, a group of cultivators whistled over from the entrance of the gorge that was suffused with blood mist. P.S. The news of winning the prize has come out. Everyone, please log into your Zongheng account and look at my news. Those who receive the news of winning the prize, please contact customer service to claim your prize. Those who didn't win the prize, don't be depressed because there will be similar activities in the future. Chapter 1219. There was no ambush under the divine underworld bloodwell. Lin Sun and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. They looked up and saw that the place where they stood was actually a silent, desolate, and gloomy world. It was as if they had walked into the netherworld. The world was deathly silent and cold. Looking up, a vortex formed by a bloody cloud appeared in the void. Just now, their group had been transported out of the vortex. After looking around for a while, Ji Xingyao and Si Yunfeng each took out a dilapidated picture scroll and put them together to study. The legendary divine underworld cave should be here. Before long, the two of them determined a position, and then they immediately took action with the others. On the way, Ji Xingyao transmitted a voice to Lin Sun. The divine underworld cave is just what we call it. It's a forbidden place, and a great fortune that defies the natural order is sealed there. In ancient times, some strong people once arrived there and judged that some kind of supreme inheritance was probably left in the divine underworld cave. Lin Sun nodded. He wasn't interested in it, and he only cared about where the old toad was now. The world was desolate, silent, and gloomy. Walking in it, all things withered. Not even a blade of grass could be seen, and the air was filled with a cold death chi. Clang! Suddenly, the sound of a sword came. In front of them, a golden sword soared into the sky, cutting through the darkness of the sky, extremely dazzling. After that, it disappeared in a flash. For hours had passed. Although they hadn't encountered any danger along the way, the atmosphere was oppressively silent. Suddenly seeing such a scene, Lin Sun and the others were shocked. Is there a peerless sword here? Mo Tiana's eyes flickered. So far, they hadn't seen anything valuable along the way in the bloody underworld cave, so they got nothing. After walking for dozens of miles, a barren tomb like a hill appeared. No one knew how long it had been standing here, and a stone tablet stood in front of the tomb. The stone tablet was dilapidated, and after the erosion of wind and rain, it could still be vaguely seen. 8 ancient words were written on it. The Great Way exists forever. Lin Sun and the others couldn't help but be surprised. This tomb seemed ordinary, but was extremely extraordinary. It stood here like a hill, and it emitted an invisible momentum. This sort of force connected the sky above and the earth below, and it fused into one with this area. Even though it was shapeless, it emanated a lofty, eternal, and boundless feeling. Standing before him, he was as tiny as an ant, causing others to involuntarily feel a sense of reverence. Could it be that this is a holy tomb? Si Yunfeng's eyes were burning. The others more or less revealed expressions of excitement. A divine tomb must contain something of astonishing value. Clang! Suddenly, a clear howl resounded out from within the tomb, and then a bright silver blade light charged out. It was like a graceful white dragon that soared into the sky, and it was extremely conspicuous in this dark world. That golden sword light just now must have come from this tomb. Mo Tianhe muttered to himself, looking forward to it. After experiencing numerous dangers and unusualness, they finally passed through the Nether God Bloodwell and entered this place with great difficulty. Yet they didn't gain anything all along the way, and it caused them to suspect that they'd come to the wrong place. But now no one would think that way. This is not saber chi, but a phenomenon manifested by the origin Dao flame. Ji Xingyao's clear eyes rippled with extraordinary splendor as she looked up into the sky. Lin Sun noticed as well that the silver saber chi that flashed up was actually an illusory phenomenon, and when he looked carefully, it seemed like it was condensed from silver-colored flames. In an instant, the expressions of everyone changed, and their hearts thumped violently. The origin Dao flame was a flame that was born from the quintessence of the Grand Dao, and it possessed an inconceivable and miraculous effect in nurturing and tempering supreme king weapons. It was common knowledge that so long as one stepped foot into the king realm, one would be able to nurture one's own natal treasure, and it was also called supreme king weapons. Every single ancient sect had different secret techniques to refine and nurture supreme king weapons, and each had its own profundities. However, whether or not it was refined by the origin Dao flame would cause the supreme king weapon to possess a completely different might. With the assistance of the origin Dao flame, the quality and might of the supreme king weapon would undergo a tremendous change, and it would possess the potential to advance into a saint treasure. Without the assistance of the origin Dao flame, relatively speaking, the quality and power of the supreme king weapon would be limited, and it would be impossible for it to grow into a saint treasure in the future. For example, if Lin Sun refined a supreme weapon of King's Path, he could constantly refine the weapon with the original Taoist fire. As long as there were enough spiritual materials and divine materials, the supreme weapon of King's Path could be constantly transformed until it evolved into a holy treasure. On the contrary, if there was no origin Dao flame, it would be impossible to achieve this step. This was the value of the origin Dao flame. In the outside world, the origin Dao flame had long been divided up by the old monsters in various sects, and there were very few of them left. After all, which old monster would give such a treasure to the younger generation? Even peak kings like Ji Xingyao, Mo Tianhe, and Yunfeng had only been told by their sects before they came to the absolute summit region that if they were able to step foot into the ultimate king realm and return safely, then their sects would consider seeking a ball of quintessence Dao flame for them. In other words, if Ji Xingyao and others wanted to obtain the origin Dao flame, they must also meet the requirements of their sects. So, it is very likely that there is more than one kind of origin Dao flame buried in this tomb. Yunfeng gasped and couldn't calm down. It must be so, and the quality of the origin Dao flame that can show such a shocking phenomenon is absolutely amazing. Ji Xingyao's starry eyes were shining, and she was also quite excited. Before arriving at the cave of God Underworld, it was very likely that they would get a great fortune that could only be encountered by chance. It was difficult for anyone to calm down. The origin Dao flame exists forever. Lin Sun looked at the mottled stone tablet and said, "There should be a chance about the origin Dao flame hidden here." One of the important reasons why he hadn't refined the Supreme King weapon before was that he still lacked a kind of origin Dao flame. Now, the chance was very likely to be in front of him. While they were talking, on the hill-like tomb, there were rays of bright light rising into the sky one after another, evolving into different shapes and amazing phenomena. It could be judged that there were definitely a lot of origin Dao flames under the tomb. In that case, let's act quickly. As soon as Yunfeng's words came out, everyone immediately echoed. They really couldn't wait. "Wait," Lin Sun suddenly said. He stepped forward and released his divine awareness to sense carefully. The others frowned a little. Why was there a need to be so careful? Couldn't they just break the tomb? "Let me do it." The strong man, named Jean Lucio, was a little impatient. He stepped out, took out a black spear, and suddenly swung it down with a roar. Boom! The void suddenly collapsed and exploded, which showed how fierce this blow was. However, at this moment, Lin Sun waved his sleeve and retreated with Ji Xingyao far away. At the same time, the tomb suddenly emitted a taboo wave, which spread like a tide. With a bang, Jean Lucio was the first to bear the brunt of it. He was severely shaken and fell hundreds of meters away, with blood spurting from his mouth and nose. Mo Tianhe, Yin Feng, and the others didn't retreat at the first time and were also affected. They all dodged and resisted in a panic, and noisy screams followed. Only Lin Sun and Ji Xingyao were safe and sound. Have you seen it before? Ji Xingyao couldn't help asking. Lin Sun said, I just felt something was wrong, so I asked you to wait a moment. I didn't expect that Taoism fellow Jean was a little impatient, so there was such an accident. Jean Lucio, who had just returned, suddenly looked a little embarrassed. Was Lin Sun blaming him for the delay? When he was about to say something, Yin Feng glared at him with cold eyes. He suddenly became stiff and didn't dare to say more. At the same time, Yin Feng said with a friendly look, Brother Jean, since you have noticed something strange, do you have a way to solve it? The others also looked at Lin Sun. Wait a moment, everyone. As Lin Sun spoke, he began to look around the tomb. For a moment, he stood in a place and suddenly exerted force under his feet. With a bang, the earth shook and the soil splashed, exposing a layer of strange black slate leading to the tomb, like a paved road. After clearing away the soil bit by bit, one could see that the black stone slab was imprinted with many totems. They were flames of various shapes and sizes. Some are like sabers, swords, cauldrons, and towers. Some are like birds, beasts, and demons. Seeing this, everyone was excited and couldn't help but look at Lin Sun. It seemed that they didn't expect that Jean Dui could see through the truth of this place. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He walked along the black slate to the foot of the tomb. After a short look, he stretched out a hand and pressed it gently in the air. Crack! Crack! An amazing scene appeared. As Lin Sun pressed down, the ancient rocks under the tomb were separated to two sides, revealing a tunnel-like path leading to the depths. It's done? Others were surprised and looked at Lin Sun with more and more strange eyes. They didn't expect that Jean Dui had such a magical ability. In fact, this was the credit of the eyes of Mocking Wind, which had a magical effect on detecting acupoints and pulse. As Lin Sun stepped into the King realm, the power of the eyes of Mocking Wind became more and more wonderful. It could see through more falsehoods and see through the essence of heaven and earth. Mo Tianhe rubbed his hands and couldn't help rushing into the tunnel. But he immediately stopped, looked at Lin Sun with embarrassment, and asked modestly, Brother Jean, is it safe now? Lin Sun's eyes were a little strange. If this guy knew that he was the Lin Sun who had beaten him up, would he still be so polite to him? It's safe now, but I can't judge whether there are other dangers in this tunnel. Lin Sun said casually, How about Brother Jean lead the way? We will do our best to protect you. Si Yinfeng also spoke very politely. Ji Xingyao suddenly found that Lin Sun had become the backbone of their group. At least now, even Mo Tianhe and Si Yinfeng had to rely on his strength and wisdom. It is gold. No matter where it is, it will shine. Chapter 1220. Lin Sun readily agreed. But before taking action, he quickly restored a series of traces nearby one by one. Then he asked Ji Xingyao and others to enter the tunnel first, and then he waved his sleeves quietly. Buzz! In an instant, the cracked rock in the tomb closed up again, and the tunnel disappeared. At the end of the tunnel, it was bright, and the airflow was warm and fresh, filled with a peaceful atmosphere. It was hard to believe that under a magical ancient tomb, it was not gloomy at all, but like a pure land. Everyone suppressed their excitement and moved forward cautiously. Soon, they were all surprised to find that the space under the tomb seemed to extend infinitely, becoming more and more vast and distant. And they all felt that they were getting smaller and smaller. This was not an illusion. It could only mean that there was a folded space under the tomb, which looked ordinary but was actually vast. Clatter, suddenly, there was a thunderous sound of waves in front of them. Before long, a huge ice lake came into view. Snow-white sword chi swept out like rolling icicles, shining brilliantly and extremely sharp with a kind of frightening aura. The nearby airflow suddenly became piercingly cold, and the ground around the lake was condensed into a thick layer of transparent ice. Even Lin Sun and others shuddered as soon as they arrived. The airflow was so cold that it penetrated into their bones and souls. In the lake, snow-white sword chi was densely packed, rolling like an icy tide, bringing with it a cold and sharp chi. But almost immediately, everyone's eyes were attracted by a snow-white ice lotus in the center of the lake. The ice lotus was crystal clear, holy, and magnificent, and at its stamen, there was a snow-white transparent flame burning. As the flames swayed in the stamen, the snow-white sword chi in the lake also rolled, echoing with each other, which was wonderful. Gulp! Someone swallowed his saliva and made a sound, which was particularly harsh in this quiet atmosphere. But no one paid attention to it, because everyone could see that there was a ball of Taoist fire on the ice lotus in the center of the lake, and it was of extremely high quality. Have you ever heard of a similar Taoist fire? Mo Tianhe stared into the distance with burning eyes. It looks like the heavenly snow profound fire, but its quality is far inferior to this ball of Tao flame in front of me. Qi Yunfeng's eyes were also extremely bright, spitting out divine light. Previously, they had all determined that there was an origin Tao flame hidden beneath the tomb. However, when they saw it with their own eyes, they were still unable to conceal their joy and excitement. This was a great fortune that could only be chanced upon and not sought for. Let's not talk about that for now. There's only one quintessence Tao flame right now. Even if we obtain it, how should we distribute it? As soon as Ji Xingyao spoke these words, everyone's hearts shook while the fervor in their minds reduced greatly. They looked at each other and were slightly hesitant and indeterminate. Fellow Taoist Jean was the one who led us to this place. I suggest that fellow Taoist Jean obtain this item first. Unexpectedly, Yin Shui said that she wanted to give this ball of primordial fire to Lin Sun. The others looked at each other with flickering eyes. Even Lin Sun was a little surprised, but he immediately said with a smile, "You don't have to do that. I think this place is very magical, and there must be a lot of primordial fire hidden here. I'm already very grateful that I can go with you this time. It's up to you to decide what to do with this ball of primordial fire." The others all looked relieved and looked at Lin Sun with much softer eyes. Qi Yunfeng took a deep breath and said, "Brother Jean, you are my friend. You can rest assured that I will definitely help you get a satisfactory quintessence Tao flame in this action." Mo Tianhe also said, "Yes, fellow Taoist Jean is generous and righteous, and he has been through thick and thin with us. He is no longer an outsider. If fellow Taoist Jean needs any help in the action later, I am willing to give you a hand." The others also nodded. Originally, Ji Xingyao muttered to herself that Lin Sun was a little muddle-headed. He didn't want such a great opportunity, but gave it up. But now, she vaguely understood. If Lin Sun unceremoniously fought for the opportunity in front of him, it would inevitably arouse the resistance and disgust of Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe. Even if there was no conflict, it would inevitably cause a grudge. This would only put Lin Sun in a disadvantageous position in the next action. But at this time, he directly took a step back, which, on the contrary, won the approval and favor of Qi Yunfeng and Mo Tianhe, so that the relationship between them would not become tense, and it was also conducive to the next action. However, if Lin Sun knew Ji Xingyao's thoughts, he would definitely laugh. He didn't think so much. Before, with the perception power of his divine soul and the many observations of the wind-mocking eyes, he had already determined that although this quintessence Tao flame was rare, it was not suitable for him. Therefore, he gave it up without hesitation. Otherwise, it was not a big deal for him to completely fall out with Mo Tianhe and Qi Yunfeng. Finally, after negotiation, the quintessence Tao flame in front of him belonged to Qi Yunfeng. Boom! Qi Yunfeng, who had long been unable to restrain his excitement, took action at the first time. He ran his cultivation, and his right hand suddenly became as black as ink, surrounded by brilliant Taoist light. Then he grabbed at the center of the lake across the air. Whoosh! But halfway, a snow-white sword chi suddenly rushed out of the lake and blocked the attack. At the same time, a snow-white creature that seemed to be condensed from ice and snow appeared. Amazing! Such a place of opportunity actually has a creature guarding it. It can only prove that this quintessence Tao flame is extremely extraordinary. Qi Yunfeng's eyes lit up. Without saying a word, he raised his hand and struck out with a powerful palm print. At his level, a casual strike had the power to burn mountains and boil seas. The ice creature's body exploded with a bang, and it was forcefully killed. This guy's combat strength is extraordinary. He should be slightly stronger than Mo Tianhe. Lin Sun seemed to be lost in thought. Rumble. Unexpectedly, the ice and snow lake surged, and over 10 ice creatures rushed out in succession. They transformed into ferocious beasts, birds, and demons, and their auras were monstrous. They can already compare to experts in the second tribulation of the longevity realm. Ji Xingyao was shocked. Get lost! Qi Yunfeng's long hair fluttered, and his eyes were like cold lightning. His 5 fingers condensed into a strange seal, and wind and thunder surged, and it was extremely dazzling. At this moment, as an ancient freak that walked out of the Xianming Divine Mansion in the Saint Hermit Land, a tyrannical figure who had stepped into the Extinction King realm, Qi Yunfeng fully displayed his unparalleled might. Bang! 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 A wave of explosions resounded. Those 10-plus ice creatures exploded into pieces, and they were annihilated by the domineering might of Qi Yunfeng. He seemed to possess an unparalleled might that could sweep through the world. This allowed Lin Sun to instantly make a concrete judgment. Experts who had stepped into the Extinction King realm at least had the ability to kill ordinary longevity kings across realms. As for top-notch experts like Qi Yunfeng, they already had the combat strength to kill opponents 2 small realms above them. In other words, ordinary kings who had experienced the second tribulation of the longevity realm were destined to be no match for Qi Yunfeng. Whoosh! In the center of the lake, a snow-white Tao flame leaped out. As if it had a premonition that something was wrong, it tore through the void and was about to escape. It seemed extremely intelligent. However, Qi Yunfeng's large hand grabbed it firmly and pulled it back. When he flipped his palm, a snow-white Tao flame that looked like a spiritual sword floated in the air. It swayed and sprinkled a magnificent rain of light. Good treasure. With you, my Xianming spear won't be able to transform into a holy treasure in the future. Qi Yunfeng was in high spirits and laughed. Others more or less showed a touch of envy. In the outside world, there were not many things that could attract top kings like them, and the origin of Tao Flame could undoubtedly be regarded as one of the most precious treasures. Boom! After losing this ball of origin of Tao Flame, the ice lake in front of them instantly collapsed and disappeared in front of everyone at a speed visible to the naked eye. Let's go. Let's continue forward. Next, I will seek a similar opportunity for all of you. Qi Yunfeng was full of heroic spirit. Although his arrogant attitude was a little arrogant, he did not intend to take everything for himself. This alone made Lin Sun feel a lot more at ease. Just as everyone had predicted, the number of origin flames beneath the tomb was not small. After just 10 minutes, a strange divine tree appeared in front of everyone. The tree seemed to be made of gold and iron, and it was suffused with a metallic sheen. Its branches and trunk were bare, and a ball of golden Tao flame hung on its branch. As the Tao flame swayed, dazzling golden sword chi appeared in the surrounding void, and it shot into the sky with a clang. It was extremely miraculous. In terms of appearance, it was completely not inferior to the ball of Tao flame obtained by Qi Yunfeng. The phenomenon of the golden sword that we saw outside the ancient tomb could not have been produced by this ball of origin of Tao flame, right? Jean Lucio revealed a trace of madness. Obviously, he was extremely tempted, but according to the agreement, This ball of Tao flame would be obtained by the profound Inquisition sword school. Boom! Mo Tianhe made a move, but he was also obstructed by the metal creatures that guarded this place. All of them seemed to be made of gold and iron, and their combat strength was extremely formidable. But in the end, they were still no match for Mo Tianhe and were slaughtered. The ball of golden origin of Tao flame was also obtained by Mo Tianhe. At this point, everyone was more and more expectant. 2 balls of origin of Tao flame had been obtained, which undoubtedly proved that the distribution of origin of Tao flame in the world under the tomb was far beyond their imagination. During the rest of the journey, they encountered another green cloud that was swaying high in the void. The cloud also contained the origin of the Wayfire. The Tao flame evolved into a cyan ancient lamp, which was extremely wonderful. In terms of quality, it was even better than the previous 2 balls of origin of Tao flame. In the end, it was obtained by Ji Xingyao. According to the agreement, if they encountered the origin of Tao flame again, it would be Lin Sun's turn. Lin Sun naturally had no objection to this. Even if he couldn't use it, he could hide it and give it to others in the future. It didn't take long for a silver flaming mountain to appear in everyone's sight. At the top of the mountain, a ball of silver Tao flame floated, sprinkling dreamlike brilliance. The quality of this Tao flame is extraordinary. Qi and Feng and others all realized that the quality of this ball of Tao flame seemed to be a little higher than the ones they had obtained before, which made them all excited. Who would complain about such a rare opportunity? But in the end, they still refrained from breaking the rules. Along the way, Lin Sun had left a good impression on them, so they didn't want to rob him.